Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Scrutiny and Performance Committee on Monday, the 10th of November 2025. I am Councillor Andrew Wilson, Chair of the committee. Before we start, can I ask you to check that your mobile phone is either switched off or on silent mode. This meeting is being webcast live, so therefore, please can all members make sure they turn on their microphones before speaking. Members are also reminded of the need to face the microphone when speaking and to speak clearly. To my right is Councillor Graham Shaw, the Deputy Chair, and to my left is Chris Bending, Director of Place, and to his left is Emma Bourne, Senior Democratic Services Officer, who will be clerking this meeting today. Other members of the committee and officers sitting around the table can be identified by the nameplates in front of them. I will now begin the meeting with notifications of attendance. Councillor Owen Williams, yes.
Can I make a point of order? With all due respect, as the Chair is under investigation by standards, and I believe the police for making remarks about the leadership and officers of the Council, does the Chair consider he is suitable to chair this meeting?
Councillor Owen Williams, that is not a point of order, and I am not aware of any standards complaint against me or indeed any police investigation against me. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Cleaver this morning, Chair, and Councillor Primmitt will substitute for Councillor Cleaver for the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item is declarations of interest in respect of any items on the agenda. Does anyone have a declaration of interest? No? Okay, so that takes us on to minutes. Can I have a proposer and seconder for the minutes for the meeting held on Monday, the 22nd of September 2025? Councillor Shaw, Councillor Lunn. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Thank you. Right, the next item is the actions log. There are no outstanding actions, so that takes us on to the next item, which is the Crowborough Army Camp. Now, this item is on the agenda because on the 28th of October, the news broke that Crowborough Army Camp was apparently going to be used to house 600 migrants in Crowborough. At 9:30, approximately 9:30 that morning, when I found out, I emailed the Chief Executive of the District Council and I asked that an emergency meeting of the Scrutiny Committee be convened at the earliest opportunity to deal with the detail around this. In practical terms, the earliest opportunity was actually this meeting, so hence this item has been added to the agenda. And that is the background to why we are considering this item today. I'm sure we've all seen in the press and the public sort of discourse around this, and I'm hoping that we get some answers today around what happened and also what the plan going forward is. So I'm pleased to say that we are joined by representatives from the Home Office today, along with representatives from obviously Wealden. We have East Sussex Fire and Rescue Service here. We did not get a response we got a decline from East Sussex County Council. We didn't hear back from the NHS, and Nusrat Ghani was invited as a matter of courtesy, but obviously she's not here. Before we crack on with the rest of the agenda, can I just say that ordinarily the door over there to my right is normally open to go to the toilet. That door is actually locked today, so if you do need the loo, you'll have to go out through the lobby and through the other door, just as an FYI. So I believe also that the police were invited. They had confirmed attendance, and then about half an hour ago, a message was received by the District Council, and I will read it to you. and it is from Superintendent Nick Dias, and it was sent to officers. And he says, "I am sorry, but I am unable to attend the scrutiny meeting this morning. At the current time, Sussex Police is waiting for plans and further information from the Home Office so we can fully understand and assess the impact of the proposed site at Crowborough Training Camp. The Home Office will be attending the meeting this morning, and they are best placed to be able to provide the answers to the questions of the Scrutiny Committee at this stage." I appreciate his sentiment there. I don't quite know how he knows what questions we were going to ask him, and that the Home Office were better placed to answer those, but there we are. He's not here, and so we will proceed as such. Apparently the webcast is having a problem with the microphone. It's just, is it not?
I'm hearing you, not via the PA system.
Can the people at the back hear me? Yes?
Apologies, we appear to have lost sound.
There's no sound on the web. So there's no sound on Teams, or there's. On the webcast. Can we sort that out before we get going? Thank you.
Can those that have said that they haven't got any sound, can you confirm that there's sound now? It was just the chair speaking. There was no other person speaking.
Just to confirm, Chair, I can now, it's Andrew Larton from the Home Office, I can now hear you.
Thank you. So, because I understand there was a problem with the sound, I'm going to reread what Superintendent Nicholas Dias from Sussex Police said. He had previously confirmed to attend this meeting, but earlier this morning he said, "I am sorry, but I am unable to attend the scrutiny meeting this morning. At the current time, Sussex Police is waiting for plans and further information from the Home Office so we can fully understand and assess the impact of the proposed site at Crowborough Training Camp. The Home Office will be attending the meeting this morning, and they are best placed to be able to provide the answers to the questions of the Scrutiny Committee at this stage." So that was Sussex Police's reasoning for not attending this morning. Councillor Coleman.
Just that it says TBC about who's coming from the Home Office, and I was just wondering if you could clarify who is here from the Home Office, the names of, is it both Hannah and Andrew?
I'm going to ask the Home Office representatives to introduce themselves before we get going. Thank you. Right. So with that, would the Home Office representatives please first introduce yourselves, and then would you mind just giving a quick overview of the background to your desire to use Crowborough Training Camp and the actions that you've taken from the point that you made that decision to today in respect of things like liaising with stakeholders, keeping the District Council and other local stakeholders informed of what was going on, and just be as thorough as you can, please.
Good morning, Chair. My name's Andrew Larter. I'm the Director of Asylum Accommodation here in the Home Office. Can I just check you can hear that okay? I'll pass to my colleague Dave to do a brief intro as well. I'll then set out an initial response, and then Dave can talk about some of the further detail. Chair, if it's okay, we'll keep our comments fairly light, not because we're not willing to give you depth, but I'd rather sort of give you extensive answers to any specific questions that come. But Dave, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, morning, Chair. So it's Dave Harding, Deputy Director at the Home Office with responsibility for asylum accommodation. Hand back to you.
Thanks. So all I'll do at this point is just confirm some of the points that have already been made, and hopefully that can take us into a further conversation. You will have heard and seen reports of the government's intentions to exit the use of asylum hotels by the end of the Parliament, and its wishes to draw on alternative forms of accommodation to do so. Some of you will be aware that asylum seekers are accommodated not just in hotels, but also in accommodation in the private rental sector. The government considers that both of those, while necessary at the moment to meet the Home Secretary's statutory responsibilities, represent a real challenge for communities, as we have seen from the disorder and protest that we've seen in the last 2 summers. But many of you will also recognise that the challenge that represents to wider public services on a daily and weekly basis. So the government's intentions to draw on things that can be described as large sites, we think are viable and suitable alternatives, not just for the asylum seekers that we have a responsibility for, but also the neighbouring communities. And hopefully we can talk more about the detail there. I'll pause there, and then Dave, do you want to just go on into a bit more detail, and then we'll just handle the questions that you put to us as best we can, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, so I can pick up some of the detail where Andrew's left off. So I think you asked around the sequence of our engagement that's taken place. So that engagement started with operational statutory partners, and that started on the 10th of October with meetings that we had with Wealdon District Council and East Sussex County Council. On the 13th of October, we met with Sussex ICB, so we met with healthcare. We also met with Sussex Police, and then I think on the 15th of October, we arranged a site visit for Wealdon Council, and the attendance there was Chris Bending, Director of Place, and Trevor Scott, Sussex County Council. Attendance was also Mark Hendricks, Head of Partnerships. Just to give you some headlines around our plans and the proposal at the moment. So you know that the site will provide basic, functional and humane accommodation while asylum claims are processed. The Ministry of Defence have offered us the site, or the use of the site, for a 12-month fixed period, after which time it will be returned to the MOD for use as part of their training estate. We will not be serving any asylum decisions on site. And that's important because as people become decision ready, they will be moved and dispersed across the UK to various other accommodation sites, and from there they will receive their decisions. The site will operate safely and respectfully with mitigations for local impacts, such as on community and services, as well as wider engagement. So in terms of cohort, the cohort will be single adult males, so there won't be families or children on that site. And also the final occupancy in terms of the duration of length of stay, we're just working through that detail, but there's likely to be a fixed point that somebody will stay on the site for, but they're more likely to be decision ready before that time will be reached and moved off. We experience at Wethersfield it's around 70 odd days that people will be staying there. The amounts are looking like it's around 540. We're just going through the final plans at the moment, so it's short of the 600 that we've said in the media, but it's around 540. And in terms of the facilities on site, we try to make the facilities as self-contained as possible, so that there are access to services and there are recreational facilities that are provided. We're also going to work very closely with local voluntary and community sector so that that the site runs really well, and we've got a Home Office operational oversight team that is with our provider on site through working hours in the week, and our provider will be on site with full security and welfare support, and they'll be on site every day of the week. The accommodation will be shared, so shared facilities. It'll be provided on a full board basis, so meals will be provided, and we're just working through the commercial details at the moment with our provider. And once we've gone through our process of receiving governance, then we confirm our decision formally to use the site. But at the moment, as Andrew said, we're in a sort of preparation phase, waiting to confirm readiness to do that. Hopefully that's a bit more detail for you. There is a fact sheet that's available on gov.uk, which anyone can access, and we are committed to updating that as we move closer through the design of the proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Just before I open it to the committee for questions, I have one of my own, please. Obviously, you've said that the government is keen to close the asylum hotel sort of programme, and I understand that. My understanding, though, is that the people coming to this particular site are not going to be coming from those hotels, and they are going to be coming after an initial vetting process that happens at Manston in Kent. Is that accurate?
Yes. So let me just, I'll talk at a relatively high level about some of the processes, but Chair, we can furnish a bit more detail, perhaps in writing after. But anybody that arrives via small boat is received at our reception centre in Manston, and there are some specific checks which are undertaken before those asylum seekers are moved into our wider estate. Now, in many circumstances, asylum seekers are likely to move from Manston to what we describe as our ring-fenced hotels, all of which are in the south of England, and that allows us to ensure that those checks are complete. With regards Crowborough, there are two routes which we might draw on for the cohort here. They may well come direct from those ring-fenced hotels, which would mean that they have been in the country a relatively short period of time. The second route is we may also draw them from already being in what we describe as a contingency hotel. So the difference would be the amount of time that they have been in the country. But the key thing is the core checks that are done up front will be done in either of those two scenarios.
Thank you. I note you want to speak, Councillor Owen-Williams. Thank you. I'm interested to understand just how you establish the background to these people, because obviously, there will be instances where you have very little information about their history, about who they are, where they've come from. I appreciate that. I think interviews occur and questions are asked, but given that Crowborough is, as I understand it, going to be an open facility, i.e. the people are going to be able to come and go into the community as they please, a concern that has been raised again and again and again by the community in Crowborough is one of, we don't know who they are, and we don't know whether they have criminal histories. We don't know their backgrounds. So to the extent that there is a possibility that some of them do have criminal histories, how are you mitigating the impact on the community of letting these people just wander around?
Chair, so you're correct. All of the government's asylum accommodation is non-detained, is the phrase that we use. So it has to be non-detained and has to be operated in a way which is in effect non-detained. Just to confirm your point there. We'll describe the detail of the checks which we undertake in that first period of their arrival here. That will give us some information about them, both about who they are and where they are from, but also some of their health status. Now, particularly on the latter, and often local partners are as worried about the any health issues that they may have or may bring with them. We are restricted to, in most cases, to what the individuals will share with us. So the upfront engagement with asylum seekers is key. You'll hear me say this quite a lot, and I completely respect that our local partners in police and healthing will be as concerned as local authority partners about the additional pressures on their resources. But both regards the behaviour of any service, of any asylum seekers that arrive with us, or on the health needs, the joint work with those local partners is absolutely key to pick those up quickly and to respond accordingly.
Thank you. Councillor Owen Williams, please.
Thank you. Firstly, thank you very much to the officers from the Home Office for coming. We've had 2 weeks. I live in Crowborough. We've had 2 weeks of rumours and very small amount of... Closer? Thank you. Yeah, we've had very small amount of information, and we've been waiting a long time to get some of these answers. So thank you for sending somebody who can actually give us those answers. Right. I've got people living in my ward who are employed at the camp as it stands for its normal duties. Have they been given notice that they'll no longer be required? What is the procedure going on regarding their employment? Shall I give you a list of questions, or shall I do them one at a time? What's best for you?
If that's aimed at me, is that aimed at the chair or me, Councillor?
Well, whoever wants to answer it.
I will answer it. My intention with this is to let councillors follow a line of questioning should they wish to do so.
So one at a time?
No, you can deal with all the questions you want to deal with, Councillor Owen Williams.
Okay. What's the average age of the asylum seekers? Because obviously we're hearing young men. As far as I understand it, it's 18 to 65. I know there's no exact figure, but you must have a figure of what you expect the average age to be. Yes, on the consultation that you made on the 10th and going forward, what pressure did you put on the authorities and services that you consulted to keep this confidential? Was it a gentleman's agreement, or was it basically laid down that they could not reveal any of this until your announcement was made? There are a standard number of beds in dormitories and such like at the camp at the moment, and it's used by cadets, by TA, by various people. Will those beds be increased, or will they stay pretty much what they are at the moment? And obviously, there's going to be some stuff on site, which will mean that it's very self-contained in lots of ways. Will there be entertainment provided to keep these people busy so they don't have to go outside if they get bored? That's all I've got at the moment. Thank you.
Chair, would you cue me back in when you're ready, or do you want to go to another?
No, I'd like to hear the answers to Councillor Owen Williams' questions, please.
Okay, I'll lead off, and Dave, obviously, if I miss any, please do come in. So on staff, my understanding is that the staff that we are most got in mind here will work for Landmark, our hard facilities management providers, and those conversations are still ongoing. The effect of that is really key, and I hope that we can get to a good solution for that, and quickly. On the average age, it is the average age will be, I can't give you an average, but the range will be 18 to 65. In effect, they will be older than 18 because, as we've discussed with your county council partners, one of the tried and tested practices we have is that if anybody that has presented with any query about their age, we will not route to a large site to ensure that there is a minimal likelihood of age disputes on site, which would be a significant burden for the social services of the upper tier council. With regards the
Sorry, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
that's not really an answer. You've just said they're over 18, which I get, but then you must have an idea, are they average age 30, 40? What is the roughly average age of the migrants, please?
we won't know. And if I gave you an average answer, it would be I think it would be too broad a steer, because depending on the cohorts as they arrive, that can change quite frequently depending on where we are drawing from. So it is not that, hopefully it doesn't sound like I'm trying to avoid the answer. It's that there isn't a credible answer to give you. What we would absolutely do is, as we are opening the site and ramping up the occupation, that's exactly the sort of detail that we would want to share with you, but it will vary site to site and over time.
Councillor Coleman. Sorry.
I'll wait to come in until you're ready, Chair.
Councillor Coleman, if you'll wait, Councillor Owen Williams seems to have more questions.
No, sorry, I just thought we'd got to question 2, and I thought presumably this is on the same subject.
If you want to...
I don't have more questions.
If you want to continue, please continue.
Okay, I was just clarifying. I've had 2 answers out of 5. I just was clarifying that.
Okay. If the Home Office could continue
Yeah.
with the answers, that would be great.
The second question was about pressure. I hope that my opposite numbers in the Council in Health and Police will feel this is a fair answer. What we asked colleagues to do was for a window of time where we could discuss the operational practicalities before it went into the public media. I'm pretty certain that I would have used the explicit phrase that we completely recognise the duties of each of those counterparts, and that they may well judge the need to talk to either their elected leaders or other counterparts. At no point did I attempt to restrict any of those partners from sharing the information widely. But yes, we will have asked them to help us with a window of time to prepare before it became public. Dave might want to add on that point.
No, it's fine. Sorry, I was just going to come in on I think the last question, which is
Yeah, you
about
go for it.
entertainment. And, you know, there are a range of facilities, so recreational facilities, sporting facilities on site, and we'll also be working very closely with voluntary and charity sector to make sure that there are activities provided, because, as you said, you know, people can't work and they've got some time to kill. So we'll make sure that those activities are provided to keep that cohort on site occupied. I think you've covered all of those questions.
Yeah, I think that was it.
There was the
that's
bed,
it.
no, the additional beds.
Sorry, Councillor Williams, was that about the beds on
Yeah,
site?
there are a standard number of beds at the moment for its normal use,
Yeah.
which presumably are the right number for that, for the amount of people they're using at the moment. Is there any plan to increase the number of beds that are on site?
No, as Dave mentioned earlier, we're aiming at an operational capacity of 540.
And no further building?
We do not intend to do any building works on site.
Thank you very much.
Chair, I'll pause until you're ready for me to come back in again.
Thank you. I mean, I don't think I heard an answer to the question around, did you give a specific instruction of confidentiality to the council, to Wealdon District Council?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Scott has his hand up.
Apologies, Chair. I didn't want to jump in at this point in the meeting, but I think it's important just to say that the initial invite from the Home Office on the 10th of October includes the statement that it was an in-confidence briefing. It states your support and local insights are key, so we're keen to provide you with an in-confidence update on proposals in the East Sussex area at the earliest opportunity. I think that's reasonably clear.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Scott. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you very much. So you talk about the providers, and it's my understanding that you're intending to use ClearSpring. I'm aware that ClearSpring has so far been paid £7 billion from the Home Office for asylum accommodation. and they've made a profit, I understand, of around £187 million from that. And in fact, the excess profits are due to be paid back because they've seemed to be excessive. But I understand that those profits haven't yet been paid back to the Home Office. I'm also aware that 60 charities have written an open letter saying that people seeking asylum are housed in miserable conditions, with millions in public money being spent, but with poor nutrition, poor hygiene, rationing of period products and loo paper, and inadequate prevention of exploitation. So there are real concerns around Clear Springs as a provider. What can you say to reassure us that actually they are going to do a good job in this instance? Thank you.
Chair, you happy for me to come in now? I'm
Please,
conscious
please.
You may have a colleague with a hand up. But
Yeah,
I'll let you pick that.
Councillor Stephen Shing has his hand up. Councillor Shing, I will let you in, but not at this point, please. Can we get through the committee business, and then if other councillors want to come in, other councillors who do not sit on the committee want to come in, I'm very happy for you to ask a question at that point. But I've noted that you would like to speak, and I'll invite you later on in the meeting to have your say, please. Thanks. If you would, back to the Home Office. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Yes, correct. Clear Springs Ready Homes will be our operational partner when we go live in Crowborough. They, as you have suggested, they are also accountable for running asylum hotels and a large number of beds in what we describe as a dispersed estate, which is the units of accommodation in the private rental sector. They also currently operate for us the Napier camp in Folkestone and the Wethersfield site in Braintree. So they have relevant experience, tried and tested experience in this type of accommodation. I note your comments on the profits and the payback mechanisms that are part and parcel of the contracts, and we can happy to provide any further publicly available detail in writing. Dave mentioned earlier that we will have a Home Office oversight team with a presence on site, as we do with the other two sites that I have just mentioned. That's part and parcel of how we hold that provider to account on a daily basis, but also on a commercial basis, to make sure that asylum seekers are getting the adequate support that they need, that local partners who are represented here experience a good engagement with that partner, and of course, finally, to the core of your point, that we get value for money for public taxpayers' money.
Thank you. And I understand about the Wethersfield accommodation. Just to say, in that instance, it normally accommodates up to 800 people, but the Home Office temporarily increased it to 1,245. So I understand you're saying 540 here, but if you don't know exactly how long people will be staying, how can we be certain that that 540 will remain consistent and not expand beyond that?
So a question made earlier about building works. At Wethersfield, we have a combination of pre-existing accommodation and modular. So we did undertake building works at that site. We won't be undertaking building works at Crowborough, and therefore we will not go beyond the operational capacity of 540 that we've mentioned today.
Just on that point, if I could follow up on the building works point, I saw lorries of building material going into the site yesterday. So if you're not doing building works there, why are you bringing building materials into the site? I saw it with my own eyes yesterday evening at about 6 o'clock.
Yeah, so there is work that we will have to undertake in terms of some fencing to make sure that the site is secure. obviously there are things like the catering facilities as well that we will have to do some work on. There are the number of bits of raising up the level of the maintenance and the services but that will not, what you saw will not be about any additional building works.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blake-Coggins, please.
Good morning. Thank you very much for taking your time to attend this morning. However, it's regrettable that East Sussex County Council have declined our invitation to attend the meeting today. So I'm wondering if I can just ask you very quickly, what do you see as their potential role in providing safeguarding, public health inspections, social care and NHS checks, bearing in mind the pressure already under our medical services in all parts of East Sussex? Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Blake-Coggins. So as with all of our, but the bulk of the County Council's responsibilities will be similar to what it is with the rest of our asylum estate. So they are obviously the statutory and regulatory part organisation for social care and for public health. So on the latter, they have a key role in making sure that they can understand how we would manage any public health issues, particularly around communicable diseases. So they have a core statutory responsibility there. With adult social care, all of our estate operates in a way where any safeguarding issues that are encountered need to be shared with that with the local safeguarding board to ensure that those issues are managed in conjunction with the right expertise and the right governance that exists. They're the two main roles. Let me just pause there to see if that's helped with your answer.
Yes,
help with your question, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. That's helped immensely. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Councillor Cox is next.
Yeah, thank you very much for attending today. I want to relay that there's concerns for both the migrants who will be coming in, but also for the people in the constituency. Can I just ask a few things? So, firstly, you say that they're going to be there for less than 90 days. Is that a cast iron guarantee that people will be there for less than 90 days? Also, where would their onward journey be from that 90 days? Will it be in the community around them, or will it be further across the country? And also, can you confirm that because they're going to be catered for, they'll be only getting £9 a week as their allowance? And then I'll ask a few more questions after that.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. I'm going to just pick up your last point and then get Dave to come back in on the length of stay and the process. We might go into a little more detail about how that works. Councillor Cox, I can't remember the precise figure, but yes, I can confirm that they will be fully catered, and I believe it is around that figure that they will be paid in terms of additional subsistence, but yes, fully catered. Dave, do you want to go into a bit more detail about length of stay and where they would go on to?
Yeah, so the length of stay is something that we're currently working through at the moment, so we haven't got a precise figure. But I mentioned earlier that the average sort of length of stay at Wethersfield, which is a similar site, is around 70 days, and that's normally the time it takes on average for someone to be ready to receive a decision. And when they become decision ready, then they're dispersed, and they're dispersed right the way across the UK. So they're not dispersed locally, they're dispersed across the available asylum accommodation that we have across the UK.
Thank you very much for those answers. Okay, so with the £9 a week, that means that they'll be stuck where they are. The local buses cost £3 per journey to get out, so the people are kind of left in a kind of area where it's quite rural. We have an issue in our area of modern day slavery. It's been reported by Sussex Police that modern day slavery is quite an active thing in the southeast. I note that you said that this facility is going to be open and free for people to move around. How are you going to combat the issue of modern day slavery, and also when people are missing from this camp, if they decide to leave, as you say they can freely do, what are you going to do to tackle the kind of issues that we see locally, be that exploitation and the fact that these people are paid so little means that there will be more more kind of inclined to go towards some modern day slavery. And then also on top of that, the fact that the site is going to be open and people are going to be free to walk around, that brings up concerns in my eyes for not only the general public, for if, say, a person within that camp suffers from mental health issues because they're in a camp and they end up fighting out against the public, but also for those people inside the camp. This is a really heavily publicised camp. There's only 2 that you open in the country. You've also said openly that it's an open camp for people to come in and out. How are you going to tackle the fact that agitators around the country might want to come down here to make representation to these people and scare them, but also scare the general public who might want to assist or are unhappy with them as well? I fear that the location makes it prone to attacks both inward and outward, but also it means that the general public can't be sure that they're going to be safe because of the facility and the way it is formed.
Dave, do you want to keep the...
Yeah, so there is a lot in there. There are a number of things that we do. So the site is enclosed, so members of the public will not be allowed in. So there isn't any access in that's allowed. People are non-detained, so they are free to come and go as they choose. But that's with a signing in and signing out process. So we'll be aware of who's on the site at any given time. If people aren't on site and they don't return back in line with our expectation, then we do try and contact them. We also provide a significant amount of support on site. So we've got welfare on site. We've also do quite a lot of work with the induction. So, you know, we provide sessions on sort of cultural norms and expectations and how to keep themselves safe. So, you know, we encourage them not to mill around in sort of large groups, and we also give them other support that's available to them on site. There is CCTV as well, and we work obviously very closely with local police as well to make sure that the sites are safe and well run. And our experience at Wethersfield is that that site is particularly well run, and we're looking to pick up on a number of the things that we've done there because we know that they work. And you know, some of that is around providing facilities, entertainment. We can also provide transport off of the site as well, so it sort of does prevent the need for people to sort of mill around in large groups and therefore be potentially exposing themselves to some harm through the local public. But yeah, there's a lot that we do on site in terms of care, welfare, recreation, pastoral support as well from faith and religious groups. And as I said, working very, very closely with the VCS to arrange for regular visits on site. And I think that's a fair mixture that we're doing here. We're also working with Nick Dearce. I know he can be with you today, and Sussex Police on safety, and you know we'll work very, very closely with them so that we can make sure that that relationship works well as we look to operationalise the site. Thank you.
Just add 2 or 3 things, if I may, Chair, very, very quickly. As Dave has said, what we are striking the balance between here is making sure that the general public cannot access the site, but not to the extent that local partners, local councillors are unable to judge the effectiveness of the site operation. So the partnership work we are trying to secure now doesn't stop. We want you, both local partners, to be confident about how it's running. I guess the second key issue that we have stepped into on a number of the questions is what is the appropriate and proportionate amount of services to provide asylum seekers on site. We believe that the site will run best if it is as self-contained as possible, but obviously there is a balance to be struck, and many of your local community members will rightly challenge if they consider that the services that we provide are too much, are too rich, are greater than what other community members might be able to access. So things like health services, transport, all of those things are rightly challenged as to whether they are proportionate, and they're all part and parcel of the conversation we will continue with you.
I note that you said that there's a sign-in and sign-in out process for the
Correct.
migrants. One of the issues is that with that is you haven't highlighted what happens if a migrant doesn't sign in and doesn't sign back in. We know that there is leakage and that people don't turn back up at hotels and at accommodation, and you haven't addressed the issue of modern-day slavery, which I know is quite
Apologies.
prevalent in our area. Can you please explain what the process would be if a migrant doesn't turn up and how we'd go about it? Is it classified that they are a person in danger, or would they be just seen as an everyday person now in our society acting without paying tax?
So this is an issue which I'd be very glad to provide further detail out, right? But let me just cover the basics. On your core point about the operational processes for understanding where people are, purely on an occupation perspective, if an asylum seeker does not return within the day, within the 24 hours that they left, that they will be contacted. Our partners will contact them, mainly as a safeguarding check to understand where they are. This is the detail that I'll make sure and confirm. But if it is permissible for an asylum seeker to be away for, I believe, 7 days, but I'll check that number. And if they are away for longer than that, then our processes are geared towards starting to question whether they are in need of that accommodation. It's worth referencing that not all asylum seekers will come to the Home Office and seek and ask for accommodation or even for financial support. So we will challenge whether they need it if they are away for that period of time. To the point about vulnerabilities, that obviously is an ongoing process to understand any vulnerabilities the asylum seekers have, both at the point where they arrive and the point that they come to us. As you've sort of references, some of the traumatic circumstances that the individuals will have come through may not be obviously present at the point of first interaction, and any of our accommodation, any period of time where they may feel separated from the wider community could have an effect. So that ongoing, that's key to the questions already asked, I think, by Councillor Coleman and Councillor Blake Goggins about the role of the local authority. This is not me saying that I expect the local authority to do our jobs for us, but we cannot do our jobs well without their input. And on modern slavery, that is part and parcel of the checks that are done up front and on an ongoing basis. So that's a key to the discussion with service users as we work through. But again, I'd like to provide you with a bit more written detail about how that works, if that's okay.
So just in short, that if a person goes missing, they can be missing for 7 days, which will mean they'll be definitely in the realms of modern day slavery at that point, and you are going to put it out to your provider, not the Home Office, to deal with the issue. Is that correct?
So our provider has the first responsibility to check on the whereabouts of the asylum seeker. If they're away for longer than 7 days, and it is Home Office processes and accountability that kicks in. I can give you the detail about who the actual interactor is, but to be really clear, it is Home Office roles and rules that dictate how we would engage with the asylum seeker. If they are away for 7 days, we wouldn't necessarily assume that is because they are a victim of modern slavery. There could be a number of other reasons. Dave, do you want to just add in on that?
Just to add on to that, so the 7 days is with permission, so we would know where they are, and most asylum seekers, should they choose not to stay in this accommodation, they'll make their own arrangements and they tell us where they're going, and they do that because they need to stay on the system because they're interested in pursuing their claim through the system. So that's what we tend to find. It is up to 7 days in a 12-month period. I think that they can, with advance permission, leave the site, and then after that time, if they choose not to visit the site, again, then their support is discontinued. So that's normally how it works. So it's not that they go missing for 7 days and then we wonder where they are. It's with express permission in advance.
Just before I hand to Kevin, to Mr. Councillor Benton, just on your 7-day point, obviously this has been a very steep learning curve for a lot of us in terms of what you're intending to do, and I've read a significant amount of Home Office immigration literature, probably more than I would have liked to have done, to be honest, and I recall reading that they can be away from a site for up to 7 days, which is what you've said, but for no more than 14 days in any 6-month period. So they could, in theory, do 7 2-night periods in a 6-month period, or 2 7-day periods, or 14 one-night periods. Is that accurate, or is what you've said accurate?
I think we'll have to come back to you to confirm the precise policy.
We can provide you with the specific detail of that within today, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Benton, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have 2 points that I'd like to really focus on that have been discussed earlier in the meeting. I'll go with number 1 first. You were very emphatic that the site has to be non-detained, but you didn't explain why it has to be non-detained. Could you please give some clarity on that? That's my first question. I'll come back to my second in a moment.
Yes, the non-detained nature is part and parcel of the legal jurisdiction that that the government exists within, as do many other countries. But we can provide you with the detail of the international legislation that fits within.
So are we referring to the European Court of Human Rights as being the precedential law?
I don't know, but we can give you the detail of that within the day. I think it is a broader framework of legislation than just the ECHR.
Thank you. I'm not satisfied, I have to tell you. My second question is...
Sorry, just to be clear, as I said, we can give you the detail of that within the day.
Yeah, okay, fine. Thank you. Would you send that to me personally or to the council?
We'll share it if Chair is willing. Then what we'll do, the details that we've committed to share, will get sent to the council so that everyone can access it.
Okay, fine. Thank you. My second point is that there's a question asked of you: was the meeting on the 10th of October confidential? And you specifically said it wasn't. And then we had a counter from Mr. Scott that appears to claim it was confidential. Now, I think this meeting deserves to really know, was that meeting confidential, yes or no?
So apologies, and I know that Trevor's in the room, and that's a useful chance for me to clarify that. Yes, we asked for a confidential discussion. We asked for an opportunity to share our plans confidentially for a period of time. What I was trying to be really specific on was that and I believe I used the words, we completely respected that. Outside of that confidentiality, officers may well need to brief their elected leaders and to even engage in with other local partners. We did not, because I could not instruct those partners to not talk to anyone else. But Mr. Scott is absolutely right that we sought a confidential discussion.
Thank you very much indeed.
Councillor Glyn Ives, please.
Thank you, Chair. Lots of questions already answered there. Thank you. I'm curious by the expression "decision ready," and would kind of like to understand what that means, please. There's obviously been a deep lack of communication with the community. So I'd just like to understand what consultations the Home Office had with the communities within the Braintree area for the Wethersfield Centre, please. That's a start. Thank you.
So if I just pick up the decision ready point, and again, we can share material about this, and then Dave, if you're happy to pick up the engagement points. Decision ready. Obviously, each asylum seeker will, by the very nature of it, be making a claim for asylum. They will put their claim in, and there are various stages to the process upon which that claim goes through, to the point when they receive an initial decision, and that initial decision will broadly be a grant or not to grant, i.e. to make them a failed asylum seeker. There are many thousands of cases going through the system, and obviously they can be tracked as to the point when it is likely that they are about to receive a decision imminently, i.e. decision ready. We can use that information alongside our management of the cohort on site to spot and identify individual asylum seekers who are decision ready, so that they can be moved before that decision is issued. I hope that helps. Dave, do you want to pick up the points about the model that we worked up here with Braintree colleagues?
Yeah, so for Braintree, we certainly had engagement in a similar way insofar as we produced the fact sheet, which was made available online. I know for various groups of residents there, we also, some individuals didn't have access, for example, to internet and maybe slightly elderly, so we arranged for those to be printed off and made available locally as well through local shops. We've also attended some events, and again, we're happy to consider attendance at events where we think that it'll help strengthen that communication with members of the public. For example, we met at Braintree with the residents nearest to that site. There's a lane that is sort of on the access road there, and we met with those residents as well. So a variety of mechanisms for talking directly to the public. And again, we're happy to consider taking some of those forward as we move closer to getting the site operational and to hopefully providing some assurances and allaying some concerns.
Councillor Goodnight, do you have anything else? Okay. Councillor Primmitt, please.
Thank you. You talked, I want to sort of step back a little bit, I think. You talked right near the beginning about this site being viable, and I would like to understand what criteria has been met to make this site viable, other than the MOD have said, we got a site here, do you fancy it? I think we'd like to know that. Because to me it appears like it just happens to be vacant, therefore we might want to use it. So I think knowing the criteria would be really useful as to why this is a viable site. And I know there's been a lot of talk in and around the community about a lack of risk assessment and understanding what risk assessments have been done to ensure, I suppose, that this site is viable and it meets the risks, or we can mitigate the risks that have been raised. Certainly I'm not aware of what all those risks might be and what mitigations have been put in place. I think that's probably the crux of my initial questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Primmitt. Dave, are you happy to lead off on site viability?
Yeah, so as you said, the site is available, which is helpful to us, but it's certainly by no means the only factor that we look at. So we look really closely at what the local risks might be, the impact on the local population. We look at the impact on services, and in a sense do a community cohesion impact assessment within our due diligence to explore the viability for us of taking this site forward. And we're still working through various checks that we need to complete, which is why we cannot as yet say that we're absolutely definitely going to use the site, because we just need to make sure that all those things are in place before we sort of confirm a go decision. But there are a number of factors that are taken into account. Primarily, We need to make sure that the site is safe, legal and compliant. We need to make sure that we're providing the right standards in terms of, there are requirements around space standards. We need to do things like water testing, and we need to make sure that the site is absolutely safe to use from a service user perspective. So all of those factors are taken into consideration. It's not just about the availability of the property. We also look at the impact that this potentially could have on that community. Thanks, Andrew.
There seems to be a lot of reports around suggesting that this site had been looked at before and was deemed unsuitable. So I'd like to understand why it was unsuitable and now suddenly it potentially is suitable.
So the best way I can answer that is that both Dave and myself have been working in this area for a couple of years. To my knowledge, we have never looked at Crowborough training camp for the purposes of asylum seekers. It was obviously until recently used for Afghan refugees. But yeah, just be as clear as possible. We have, to my knowledge, and we have never considered it for asylum seeking purposes.
Could I just on that point then, and I appreciate that you've just said that you've been doing this for the last couple of years. Could I ask you to do some internal investigation within the Home Office and come back to this committee with any evidence that you may unearth that actually it was looked at in the past and was discounted?
Of course.
And also, I would ask respectfully if you could share your community impact assessment that you conducted, again, with this committee, because I think we would all be very, very interested to read that.
Yeah, we'll share as much information as we are able to, and where we're not able to share information that completely meets the needs of your members and committees, we'll tell you why.
Thank you very much. Councillor Coleman, please.
Sorry, can I just add to that? Our local MP has stated several times that the reason it wasn't proceeded with was due to grounds of cost, nothing to do with the community or location, just cost is what she said.
I mean, on that point, actually, because you've led me into another point. On the cost point, Alex Norris, in a response to a urgent question in Parliament last Wednesday, confirmed that the cost of this facility was broadly similar to the cost of hotels, and that the primary motivation for the Home Office choosing to use this facility was because it was Spartan in nature and less comfortable. So, is that accurate?
It's absolutely, Minister was absolutely accurate to say that it is. We expect this site and the site outside of Inverness, Cameron Barracks, will come in broadly similar to the hotels. I think the Minister went on to say that the government remain committed to bringing down the cost of the entire asylum system, and obviously therein the specifics of the accommodation that we use as well.
So your costs for standard dispersal accommodation are £23.25 per person per night. Your contingency hotel accommodation cost is £144.98 per night. Weathersfield is £132, and Napier Barracks is £108.58. So where in that range do you see Crowborough camp? And those numbers that I've just quoted you come from evidence that was provided to the Home Affairs Select Committee by Dame Karen Brady on the 8th of October 2025. So all of that is relatively recent information.
Yeah, so there are protocols that exist in place which dictate when we can share the specific details of the costs of this site and any other site. Weathersfield costs and I think Napier costs were, as you have just rightly said, were confirmed via NAO reports and then subsequent parliamentary select committee attendances, and that regime would apply here as well.
Right, thank you. Councillor Coleman, sorry.
Thank you very much. This slightly follows on from Councillor Ghanai's point. And so I've been reading the Home Affairs Committee report, the Home Office Management of Asylum Accommodation, which is October of this year. Its conclusion is that the Home Office has failed to properly consider the impacts of its approach to the delivery of asylum accommodation on local areas and to engage early with local partners to understand what these impacts might be. It is inexplicable that the Home Office has placed no obligation on providers to assess impacts on local areas. Failures to identify and mitigate impacts, compounded by the disproportionate distribution of accommodation, has led to some local services experiencing unsustainable pressures. The failure to recognise broader impacts can be seen in the pressures experienced by local authorities in areas where significant numbers of asylum seekers have received positive decisions and subsequently become homeless. These pressures have been exacerbated by inconsistent communication and inadequate data sharing, which has undermined the ability of local partners to respond effectively to the placement of asylum seekers in the area. And they have a recommendation to ensure that the impacts on local services are adequately assessed by providers prior to the accommodation being procured. So my question is, what is the plan? And if residents have concerns, what can they do? Where can they speak to you? Can they ask you direct questions? Do they have to go to the providers? Will there be a proper consultation? And yeah, how is there a communications plan from your point of view as well?
Just before you answer Councillor Coleman's question, I'd like to also just add to it, please. Again, quoting from the recent Home Affairs Select Committee report, because it seems to me that the decision to use Crowborough Camp it contradicts one of the conclusions that is in fact in that report. And it's on page 105 of that document. And it says, it's referring to closure of hotels, but you'll please just follow me here. When planning the closure of hotels, the Home Office should prioritise the closure of manifestly unsuitable hotels, such as those in remote areas and near limited infrastructure, that cause the most harm to their residents and place the most pressure on local services. So Crowborough Camp is by definition an incredibly remote place, and I don't understand why you would use the logic of closing hotels in remote areas that cause pressure on local services, harm to the migrants in the camp, and potentially problems in the community, and then take an MOD site and put migrants in there when it has exactly the same issues with regards to remoteness, infrastructure problems, pressure on local services, and so on and so forth. So can you just explain that rationale to me after you've answered Councillor Coleman's questions, please?
Thank you, Chair. I might go in reverse order, if that's all right, with Councillor Coleman, because it gets back to her core points, and Dave will keep me right in case I miss any. But Chair, to your exact point, the Home Office runs hotels differently to how we run large sites, and we've used the phrase a couple of times, self-contained. That Wethersfield and Napier, because of the nature of the site, it gives us the opportunity to use them and operate them fundamentally differently. So it gives us the opportunity to bring a greater variety of activity and support services on site so that they can be contained. They are easier to manage with a perimeter than a hotel. So really core to the government's position on using more of these large sites is that we can run them better than hotels, even with the issues of rurality and services. So where the Wethersfield camp is very, very rural, more rural than Crowborough. Folkestone Napier is quite different. But the starting point is that we believe that we can run them better, both for the needs of the service users and the community. But of course, going to Councillor Coleman's questions, you will only have confidence in that by means of the engagement processes that we have and the means by which we allow members of the community feedback, concerns when we are live. Dave, do you want to follow on from there in terms of ongoing engagement and feedback communications?
Yeah, I think you've covered a lot of ground there. I mean, in the report that you quote, that there are lessons that we have learned from running larger sites, and those lessons we've sought to act upon, and it's something that, you know, early engagement is really key with members of the community, and we've certainly within the constraints that we've engaged at the earliest opportunity that we had in this particular case. We've made available our fact sheet, and we know that there will be meetings with residents, I think, very shortly. I think there are a couple of meetings this week that we've already got in the diary for local people to speak to us directly. So hopefully a mixture of all of that will allay some of those concerns. But I think, just to back up Andrew's point, hotels are very, very different in their entity, of course, to larger sites. And with a larger site, we have the opportunity to provide more support, to provide, you know, more services on site, and to make sure that people are well looked after, and to make sure that any concerns are shared in the right way. And we've got tried and tested protocols with both the police and with colleagues with health and local authority to make sure that information is shared at the right time. And that's one of the functions of our oversight and assurance team, who will be on site, not just to make sure that contractual standards are being delivered in line with expectation and that we receive value for those, but also in how information is communicated and shared, and to sort of stress test those. So that's the function, and that's why we're confident that we can, in some respects, give greater support to residents, even in a remote setting compared to a hotel setting. Thank you.
The only thing I'd add is Dave talked about confidence there. We can only have that confidence in Braintree and Folkestone because of the existing partnerships with local authorities. So you will all rightly be challenging us about the maturity of the local partnerships we have to date, given the window of time that we have had to start those conversations. But we cannot be confident about the effective running without engagement with you.
Yeah, the whole point really was about the prior engagement, and there has been a massive vacuum here, an information vacuum, which has been incredibly problematic. I mean, members of this council have had threats, you know, Wilton District Council have had threats. We've been accused of taking backhanders from you. We've been accused of all sorts of things from other local authorities, other councillors, other MPs, and there's been a huge opportunity for misinformation to spread, which has been incredibly damaging to this whole process, which I think is probably why you're seeing a great degree of hostility, not because of the concern, not just because of the real concerns for both the residents and the potential asylum seekers, but also because of the way this process has been managed.
If I can just add, I think Minister Norris on the floor of the House of Commons was clear on his regret for the initial engagement, the extent of the initial engagement that we were able to have. If I could just extend my own apology, I am sorry for any of the negative, the difficult impact that it's had on any councillors or your officers or on members of your community. And for Dave and I, it's extremely important to us that we build your confidence, not just based on what's gone on in the last few weeks, but we build your confidence and maintain it going forward.
I think on that point, on the communications point, it does. This whole episode, as far as the Home Office is concerned, in terms of the communication with the community, in other members of this council, the leadership of this council, it looks to me like a really, really good case study in what not to do, actually. And I think I take, you know, thank you for your apology, but I really do hope that the Home Office takes takes this episode away as a learning experience of what not to do when you're attempting to drop 600 asylum seekers into a small rural community. It's just been very, very poorly handled, I'm afraid, from my perspective. But I'm not speaking on behalf of the committee, I'm speaking on behalf of myself. So with that, I'll move to Councillor Lunn, please.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of information this morning, so appreciate there's a lot to take on board. But I just want to pick up, if I may, going back to the timeline. Right at the beginning, the representatives from the Home Office mentioned there was 3 meetings, 10th of October, 13th of October, and 15th of October. Is that correct? Is that the 3 meetings that you had with this council?
Dave, are you able to confirm that? Dave, can you hear us?
Yeah, apologies, just getting off mute. Let me just double check for you. So, with me,
You can obviously confirm this in writing. I think Dave is just trying to make sure he gives you.
10th of October was a Teams meeting with Wealdon District Council and East Sussex County Council. The 13th was with the Sussex ICB, so with healthcare. We also had a meeting on the same day with Sussex Police. And I think they were the 3 meetings that I referred to, and those were the attendees for those 3 meetings.
So, in effect, you only had 1 meeting with Wealdon District Council, which is the 10th of October. Is that correct?
Wealdon District Council and East Sussex County Council on the 10th. We've had a number of meetings since then, but it's probably easier to confirm for you when we respond to you later today.
I would say, because we had a briefing from the leader on the 28th of October that made reference to 3 meetings with yourselves, and I'm trying to establish the timeline of when those meetings took place, because on the 31st of October, this council wrote to Mike Tapp, which I think was subsequently rewritten to Alex Norris, making reference to concerns about the camp and referencing to a letter on the 22nd of October, and that following the meeting on the 10th of October, that this council raised concerns. But when we had our meeting on the 28th of October with the leader of this council, no concerns were raised. So I'm very confused. Were concerns raised to you as civil servants to the Home Office from this council, and the letters that subsequently have materialised on the 22nd of October and the 31st of October and the 4th of November, etc., where did that communication break down? Because it's really unclear who was doing what and who was taking responsibility for what. Could you explain that, please?
I don't know that I can, Chair. Is that so? That I'm really, really clear that at every point we've talked to your council officials, they have been professional but extremely challenging about all the points that we have been discussing here. I've been under no illusion as to the level of concerns that they have had, but they have raised them in a professional and effective manner.
Okay, thank you. And I don't dispute that the officers do a fantastic job within this council, and I've worked with them for over 15 years, so I have no issues with that. But the other issue I'd like to raise is that on the, so you mentioned the 4th of October, you said there's other meetings, but we've not got confirmation of additional meetings. On the 4th of, on the 10th of October, there was a suggestion that there was going to be a payment made to this council. Can you confirm that that was said by yourselves or by the Home Office to the council, and what the details were regarding that, please?
Dave, go on.
Yeah, so in terms of the funding that's made available to the council, we wouldn't have confirmed the amounts because that's what we're currently doing at the moment. What we normally would have, or what I expect we would have done, is whether it was at that meeting on the 10th or subsequent meetings through our sort of operational working group, we would confirm our intention to secure funding, and that's what we're working through at the moment. So we wouldn't have been able to provide details of what that would actually be.
Okay, because you say you can't confirm those details, but I understand the Home Office have had multiple conversations with the Deputy Speaker where details have been confirmed and presented, which show quite a substantial amount of money that will be coming to this council. Can you confirm whether that is true or not?
So we haven't confirmed funding or amounts. What we've done is we've illustrated amounts used for other accommodation as an illustration, but we definitely have not confirmed the intention to fund or the amount of funding, because we're going through that process at the moment. And I had those meetings with Madam Deputy Speaker, so I'm well aware of what was said.
And just to underscore that, those agreements about any funding would be subject to ministerial decision. So Dave and I would not have the mandate to confirm that.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Also on the 28th of October, we were informed as members that there is a wider programme to distribute asylum seekers throughout communities as part of, I believe, Operation Scatter. Could you explain a little bit more about that operation and what the implications will be for Wealden, and whether we have actually got any allocations and how those conversations are being had with this council?
I don't recognise what Operation Scatter is, and indeed, Councillor Lund, that's the first time I've heard the phrase. So no, I don't recognise what that is. The government has been clear on a number of occasions that it intends to use large sites in more than the two areas that we've talked about there. So I think it is publicly confirmed that it intends to do that on a broader scale.
I believe Councillor Lunn was probably referring to your dispersal accommodation programme.
Yes.
So I suppose that...
Talk more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is probably what we would be interested to understand, you know, in terms of Wealden and the burden that Wealden's social housing or housing stock is likely to bear through that dispersal accommodation programme.
That is the government's full dispersal programme, and has been in place since 2022. I believe we can confirm that. The core of the contracts that we use with Clear Springs and two other providers across the country are based on full dispersal. They are based on securing the level of dispersed accommodation that we require to meet our statutory responsibilities for asylum seekers in this country. What happened during COVID, and with the significant increase in small boat arrivals during that period of time, the government needed to start using what we called described as contingency accommodation, which is hotels, and that has continued, and that is what the government is committed to end by the end of the Parliament. So there are pre-existing dispersal plans with each region and local authority that we can happily describe it, because we talk to you and your partners regularly about those. So there is nothing new there. There are numbers that have been set out for Wealden and for every other district council with housing responsibilities. There's nothing happening to that. That number is pre-existing and is not changing at this point in time.
Two more brief questions. Thank you for that answer. I understand that you've recently written to health providers in the locality about the ability and capacity of local surgeries and dental practices to manage any health requirements. I can inform you that nearly all the doctor's surgeries are struggling with appointments. If you ring up on 8 o'clock in the morning, you will not get an appointment. There is a booking system and there is literally no capacity, and there's real concerns that you are effectively writing to health providers to get this. I appreciate they're not here today, so they can't respond, but that is a real concern. And I think that needs to be clearly articulated in terms of what impacts it will have on local services within our community. The second thing and final comment I'm going to make is about the asbestos on site. It's been widely reported about the asbestos on site. There's also been reports about criminal damage to the buildings already, and I understand Sussex Police have been made aware of criminal damage to windows and also threats to the buildings because it's such a rural location. What intelligence, if any, and whether you can do this privately after the meeting, that you can share about the risks to that site in terms of criminality, either locally or elsewhere, because from a community point of view, there's real fear about what the risks are to this site. Thank you.
I'll do that in reverse order, if I may, Councillor Lunn. I personally am not aware of any damage to buildings at the moment. Yes, our colleague has just remind me that there has been some damage to windows. The ongoing threat to the buildings is obviously that's our responsibility with our provider to manage, but it's exactly what we would continue to discuss with yourself, your officers, and local police. Again, not because we're trying to delegate that responsibility, but because it's a sort of community issue we would need to be open and transparent about. There may well be asbestos on site, as with many buildings of this nature. Part and parcel of our health and safety responsibilities are to ensure that that does not pose a risk to any individuals, and we can share our assessment of that. Your points about dentistry and primary health services, it's a fundamental issue with any of these sites, and the point of engagement with the Integrated Commissioning Board is to ensure that the response to the increase in numbers is the right balance between avoiding unmanageable additional pressure on existing GP services with providing specific services to individuals on site. My understanding is that we do expect to have services on site that may well raise questions from members of your community about why some parts of the community are getting specific services over others, and that's part of the core challenge about trying to be proportionate and fair.
Thank you for that. Councillor Shaw, please.
Thank you for all your answers so far. I don't know whether I missed something, but I'm still slightly confused. Because when you responded to Councillor Primmett's question about assessment of risk and so on, you seem to imply that you were still looking at those and therefore had not yet made a decision to use Crowborough Camp. Is that the case? And
Dave, do you want to lead off?
And then I do have other questions.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, I think what I was confirming is that we still have work to do. We still need to make commercial arrangements. We still need to work with health to make sure that routine services are on site. And that design work needs to complete before we're in a position to be ready to say, we are absolutely going to use the site and it's going to be on this day. So that's what I was referring to. So there is a firm intention to use this site and we're preparing to do so, looking at all of those risks that we identified previously and some that we're now working with partners to work through, as you'd expect us to do. But I was trying to be clear in saying that we have not made a formal decision, but it is our express intention to use the site. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you. Which kind of begs the question, therefore, when do you think that you will be in a position to do that?
When that work is completed. So we still need to work through the commercial arrangements. Well, we still need to work through the commercial arrangements with our provider. We still need to make sure that health is ready to go. We still need to make sure that all of the health and safety checks to make sure that the site is fully safe, legal and compliant, to make sure that everything is in place before we're absolutely ready to do so. And to give a date prior to that would be irresponsible and probably would be a date that we could not keep to. So I think we will be able to confirm as our plans firm up and certainly as we become more ready to do so.
Okay. I understand. I'm not asking for, the 25th of November. I was thinking about, are we talking about after Christmas? I mean, but okay, never mind. Sorry.
So I think we have said to your partners that it could not be before the end of November. The fastest possible route, with all being with everything going as we would need to do, it could not be before the end of November. So I think we've said that before. But to Dave's point, if we were sat here saying it will be X date, then we would either be overreaching or we would be risking complacency about the nature of the input we need from your partners. So this can never be a sort of a linear process. There are elements of it around infrastructure and water testing and things, but you have rightly challenged us about the extent of engagement with partners that we have afforded you all, but this is sort of makes our point in a way that we have started. The absence of a firm date is exactly because we need input to get to that firm date.
Okay, thank you. I mean, clearly there's a lot of disquiet in the community. We've all been recipients of it, sitting around this table. And you've talked about, and it's welcome that you've clarified that there's been no conversations about specific resources that people have been promised, as it were. But I would like to look ahead and assume that this camp will go ahead, or the placement of asylum seekers will go ahead. And I'd like to know a bit more detail about the nature of the resources that you may make available, what they might be for, who they would be to. I mean, there's clearly this council, but there's also East Sussex County Council, which has many more strategic areas of responsibility than this council, as well as the police and the NHS and so on. And I'm wondering whether you can say a little bit more about that and draw on your experience of Wethersfield, which I know is a different scale, different place and so on, and give some kind of indication about the level of resources you've put into those communities and those organisations locally to mitigate the impact of what's happened there. To perhaps give us a sort of a kind of a scale of what you're talking about, because I think we all have worries that whilst additional resources might be welcome to cope with the additional responsibilities we have, they will not be adequate. So I wonder whether you can reassure us around that sort of area of discussion. Thank you.
Dave, you happy to lead off on that?
Yeah, I think it relates to answers that we gave some moments ago. So we are still working through that funding package. The way that it has worked with Wethersfield is that an amount is available per service user that uses the site, and that is paid to the district council. And then within that council, it's between the council as to how they choose to use some of that money. We haven't had any feedback from Braintree that the amounts that we've made available have been sort of insufficient in that regard. So I think that gives us some assurance that if we can get the funding package agreed that we are working through at the moment, then that should provide a mechanism for the council to be able to use that money, which is ring-fenced for impacts relating to the site, and we would work very closely with the council on monitoring that spend as we move through. So I think we probably can't say any more than that until we get the amounts that are agreed sorted. We do have for other partners as well mechanisms to ensure that funding is available for the healthcare that's provided on site, which take pressure off local services, and also the police also have access to funds in relation to the site. So we probably can't say any more on those details until we've firmed them up. But to reassure you, partners across the country have not expressed that that is insufficient or leaves them with significant challenges as a result.
I believe Councillor Coleman has something she wanted to.
Yeah, just on that, so I don't know if I'm sure you're aware we're in the middle of local government reorganisation at the moment. I was just wondering if the example that you're talking about, is that a unitary authority or is it a district and a county authority in the same way that we currently are? And given that we have different roles, obviously Wealdon collects the tax from people, but then we only keep 9% of it. Is it a similar example that if we had the money, then we would assume a much larger proportion would go to East Sussex County Council, for example, who's providing the safeguarding and the public health inspections and the the safeguarding and all the rest of it. So just trying to understand that kind of proportionality.
Yeah, that's a matter for the council to decide on how that money is used and apportioned between the various elements. So we are aware of the challenges that there are with different responsibilities sitting in different places. But we tend to fund funding for asylum seekers is normally given to district councils, and then they make arrangements within that system to distribute the money where they see fit. Andrew.
So just to add to that, with Wethersfield, our formal relationship was with Braintree District Council, and the funding went in that direction. When we were operating the Bibby Stockholm, obviously Dorset Council is a unitary, and our relationship was with them.
Yes, thank you, Jane. Just to top up, so just to reassure members, we are in discussions with Braintree District Council and other colleagues around the country who have had similar sites. And so we understand in the Braintree example, as you suggest, Councillor Coleman, it's a two-tier area. And in that instance, as Andrew's already said, the money passes to the District Council, but there's an arrangement. So far, the District Council in Braintree have passed more than half of that funding to the County Council to provide their essential services. So that gives you some idea of the level of split.
Councillor Shaw, you had some more questions. Councillor Fairweather, please.
Right, thank you. My query is about medical facilities. I've got to explain the background to this because there are contradictory sources of apparently official information about this. How much of the medical facilities are expected to be provided on site? How much is going to be needed to be provided from the community resources? And I ask this particularly what we know about the waiting lists, the waiting times rather, of the local GPs.
Apologies, Councillor Furlow. There's not much additional that we have to add to what we've said previously. That the reason we're in discussion with the ICB is to make informed decisions about what services are best to have on site and what not to. We do expect to have some services on site. But Dave, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just to add, I think Andrew, you've summed it up, but people are assessed to be suitable to come onto the site, and they are assessed as best as we know it as fit and healthy at that point in time. Should they become unwell when they're on site, there will be rudimentary healthcare provided, and that's what we're working with Health now to make sure that we define that provision. But that said, routine probably covers most of what those healthcare requirements are. But if somebody breaks a leg, we're not going to have an X-ray department on site, for example. So there'll be, a need to access local services in the usual way. But that demand should be very, very small, given that we've sifted people into the site based on the fact that they don't have any medical or complex medical needs. Those people are not suitable to be on this site.
So, as a comparator, the bulk of primary care services are provided on site in Wethersfield, not dentistry, but core primary health care services.
Right. So I've got a few more councillors to go down the list, and then I'm going to propose that we have a 5-minute break after those councillors have made. So I've got councillors Cox, Owen Williams, Coleman, Redman, Primmett, and then we have obviously Councillor Shing online, and then I'll have 1 or 2 very short questions at the end for the Home Office, and then I think we should take a 5-minute comfort break. So with that, Councillor Cox, please.
Yes, there are some concerns. I don't want to relitigate everything that's been said so far, but obviously you're saying that pretty much it's a guarantee that this site will be used. I find the fact that you said that there's a 7-day clause where asylum seekers can go anywhere wholly inadequate, and also the laissez-faire attitude that you have to the way you manage this. I think the Home Office need to really reassess the process that they're using. If an asylum seeker that you've already confirmed is going to get £9 a week, in the South East, the cheapest rent you can get will not be covered by £9, let alone feeding yourself. So we know they're going to go into modern day slavery, or they're going to be in other kind of aspects. Can you please look at your procedures, because I don't think that your procedures are correct, and think about how you're going to look after these people. They will be vulnerable, and to say that it's okay for them, we'll give a check-up on them in a few days' time, but we won't give a check-up on them. We'll let our agents, who already have been described as putting them in unsafe living conditions, putting them in danger. I think you need to actually maybe have a bit more of a hands-on approach to this. Maybe if an asylum seeker goes missing, the Home Office should take a hands-on approach and think about how they contact them, make sure that they're okay, look at the aspect of the fact that they're in a rural area which has a history of modern-day slavery, and try to make sure that person is being looked after. Because after 7 days, I'm sorry, but I don't think you're going to find these people. And I don't think that, I think that that's going to make sure that by not addressing this and having the laissez-faire attitude is the reason why the general public are so against this camp and so against actually the process that you're doing, and losing real confidence in the Home Office in dealing with this aspect. We need to make sure that, you know, you're working with these communities who are coming in and making sure that they're safe. And from what you've said so far, I can't see that you're doing that. And please, can you just really look at your procedures and have more of a hands-on approach to dealing with missing people who are vulnerable? Because going through and saying that you're going to give it over to your provider is not adequate, and it will not make people in our communities feel safe either.
I would also just add to that, you know, if you're intending to chase them or to try and locate them with mobile phones, I suggest you come to Crowborough and try and make a mobile phone call.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Cox. And Chair, I'm happy to take all of that back in for a broader discussion. I'll just repeat what I said earlier, that where our providers are acting on our behalf, the accountability and responsibility runs through to the Home Office. So that's all part and parcel of the policies and regulations that dictate how we work with asylum seekers. But also reference back to, this is a non-detained site. Not all asylum seekers will require accommodation and support. Not all asylum seekers will require accommodation and support once it is being given, and I completely recognise that for some asylum seekers there will be vulnerabilities which they may need additional support, particularly with regard to modern slavery.
Councillor Owen Williams.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions now. Is it fair to say that the only sanction you have on these asylum seekers staying in place is removal from the process? That otherwise, obviously you've told them where they're going to be living and you ship them there, but after that, the only sanction you have is you are off the process now. the average age, a fair point, you don't know, you can't look into the future, but you must have figures for, say, over the last 6 months of the average age of the people who you have been processing and placing in various establishments. The announcement, 2 weeks ago, we were all suddenly surprised. We had the rumours around town, that's the sort of town Crowborough is, but suddenly it was out there on the BBC and everybody was caught off guard, and suddenly we, as a council, seemed to be in the spotlight for something that almost none of us knew anything about. When were you planning to make your announcement, and what did you do once this happened? Because I'm assuming it was unexpected and accidental that it was released. What did you do to mitigate the negative publicity that you must have known was going around my community? On cost, quite simply, are these camps per head cheaper or more expensive than hotels? And on the Crowborough campsite, what education facilities will you have, please?
I'll try and take those in reverse order again. Education, these will all be single adult men. So depending on your use of the word, no formal education, but we would absolutely expect, as we have provided in Wethersfield on the Bibbystock and Folkestone, for there to be activities which would support both the integration of asylum seekers while they're with us and the integration of those asylum seekers that are granted. So there are a range of things that we can put on place, extending from English language tests, literacy. Probably the most important one is the one that Dave has talked about, which is where we explain to asylum seekers the behaviours that we expect of them whilst they are with us. But there are a range. Value for money, I can't add more to what I've already said, which, as the Minister has confirmed on the floor of the House, he expects this site and Cameron Barracks to be broadly similar to the costs of hotels, and the finer detail of that will be released in accordance with parliamentary procedures and ministerial agreement. In media terms, we tried to ensure that we had a clear government response to the media reports which triggered the public discussion about them. Dave has talked about fact sheets that are available which talk about the general use of the site. Beyond that, we are limited to trying to secure the support of partners that are here to manage the engagement going forward.
Sorry, I'm going to have to push you a little bit on that. I did ask what date you were expecting to make the announcement, and why did somebody not come down and take control of the situation? Bearing in mind you had said in confidence, and we didn't have the answers, and we weren't expecting it to happen. So why didn't someone come down? There were public meetings held in a complete vacuum by people who were just doing their best. We needed answers, and we needed someone to take the lead in this. You were the only authority that could do that. So why didn't that happen?
So the arrangements we had in place were agreed with ministers. Obviously, the public confirmation of them happened reactively in response to the media queries and the press pieces. The minister has, on the floor of the House, confirmed that he regretted how that happened. He has asked us to be here and to be at other events you have this week, so that we can take as much of the lead as possible and to ensure that you and your officers aren't left to explain our accountabilities, and we'll continue to do that.
I'm sorry to interrupt you again, but I mean, this is 2 weeks later. I appreciate what you're doing now, but this is a very, very long 2 weeks. You know, I've had threats. I've been engaged in trying to put the truth out there and fight some of the rumours and some of the untruths. It's been 2 weeks. I don't think that's acceptable. I'm sorry to criticise you, and I'm very grateful you're here today, but 2 weeks.
I completely recognise the criticism and why you would level it at us. We will take that back in discussion with ministers for everything we do going forward.
Are you finished, Councillor Owen Williams?
I think we got through 3 of the 5.
There were 2 questions about age.
We
and
didn't get the date.
sanctions.
Did we get a date for when you're intending to make the announcement? Because you must have had a proposed date, even if you couldn't stick to it. I mean, you weren't planning 2 weeks ago, I'm sure, because that wasn't an announcement, was it?
I can't give you a specific date because
So
I don't. Go on.
So I was going to say, you didn't have a proposal. I'm not saying you should have, because maybe you weren't ready, but you had a rough idea, November, December, some point at which you were going to get all your ducks in a row and actually make an announcement with all the preparation, all the backup, all the media campaign that was required. Presumably you had a plan to do that at some point, but roughly when do you think that would have been?
In the ideal scenario, which did not emerge, our intention was to engage on a narrow basis, firstly with officers that support you and other parts of the public sector, and then to broaden that out. We did intend for there to be direct national to local political discussion. And in an ideal scenario, we would have agreed a date based on that discussion. That was not possible, obviously, because we had to, in the end, react to media outlets that had reported. So the ideal scenario that I would have wanted and you would wanted is a long way from where we were able to get to, for which I am sorry for the impact that has had.
Okay, just the last 2 questions were about the average age over the last 6 months, and I'll come back to the other one when I find it.
You asked us about sanctions. So just on the age one,
Yes.
Dave and I will give you as up-to-date information as we can about. I genuinely don't know whether I'm able to give you up-to-date average ages of Napier and Witherspoon, but I'll give you as much as we can, and we'll do that as quick as possible. But it is not a piece of information that I am nervous about sharing. It's just I'm not quite sure how much available data that we have. Your point about sanctions, perhaps come back to me, because I have now forgotten the thread.
No, I'm quite happy to repeat it. There's no problem at all.
Go on, yes, if you could.
My
Sorry.
impression is, because obviously there's lots of words flying about. The impression I've gained in the last nearly 2 hours is that the only sanction you have against people leaving site and disappearing for a day, for 2 weeks, whatever, is they come off the process. Is that true?
So, process, if you mean the first point, first step is a well-being check. Councillor Cox has rightly challenged us on that. First check is well-being. The second, which kicks in after that, and we'll give you the 7-day, 14-day accurate information, for which, apologies, I don't have that in my head now. The second check is, are you still in need of accommodation and support? If you meant process in terms of come out of the asylum claim process, that's quite different. There are a number of this would not obviously so that an individual may say, actually I have found alternate accommodation. There will be some individuals where there may be greater vulnerabilities that we need to understand, but the casework process, again, we can give you a little more detail on this in writing, is there are a number of checks and points of compliance where an asylum seeker will have to stay engaged with the process, and the majority of that is a digital engagement, and we can describe that for you.
Okay, would it be fair to say there's 2 scenarios? There's the one where they leave the site, but they engage with you. There are checks carried out, social checks, which is fair enough for their well-being. But then there's the other scenario where they just disappear. If they just disappear, presumably no one's looking for them. They're not on a list. The authorities are not out to find them. They've just disappeared. Is that fair?
If an asylum seeker does not need accommodation or support, that would be withdrawn. If they do not engage with the asylum casework process, there's a point at which that would obviously end. Running across that process, our intent is that we are able to spot the risks of vulnerabilities in those individuals in the relation to modern slavery, and that would run alongside. So if there are risks of modern slavery, we would not be waiting until they have, to your phrase, disappeared to act on that.
I think I understand. Thank you.
Sorry for not being more eloquent.
I've got Councillor Coleman now, please.
Sorry, I've actually got three, and I'll try and make it really quick because they are quite brief, hopefully. The first one is, in the decision-making process, will you be providing, or will you be submitting a planning application at all to Wealdon District Council? The second question is, currently cadets are being used at the camp, and will the cadets' activities still be able to continue? And if not, how will their needs be met? And then the third question is a little bit more involved. It's about the AIRS service, so the Advice, Issue Reporting and Eligibility Service. And I'm coming back to the same report that I mentioned before, because apparently the Home Office has failed to effectively manage the performance of the service that's being provided by Migrant Help, was the provider for that, and that was seen to fail. And I was just wondering whether Migrant Help would still be used in this instance or not, and just having in mind the fact that obviously at Hailsham, very sadly, we had the suicide of Victor Hugo Vargas, who was at found dead in a hotel room, having committed suicide in October 2023. And obviously there was the suicide at Bibby Stockholm, and it was found in both inquests that there were obvious and real risks to life that weren't picked up on and acted on. So in terms of the safeguarding and things, so I'm really concerned about those areas. Thank you.
Again, I'm not going to quite do it in reverse order. Dave, I might come to you on the planning side. In terms of the cadets, we absolutely intend to support them to continue, but part of the discussion is whether is how we do that, and if there are issues which mean that it's difficult to maintain that on site, we will do everything we can to support that. Councillor Coleman, your points about Migrant Help, yes, they will be a core part of the service that we run, as they are in Wethersfield and Napier. But again, as part of this model of accommodation, we believe that we have shown that with the contribution of other partners, with the ability of our providers to work within a perimeter, and the contribution of voluntary community service, we believe that we can effect a more dynamic model of support to service users alongside Migrant Help. And yes, we, through our commercial relationship with them, hold them to account, as we do with our other providers, to ensure that they give us value for money. Dave, would you just mind picking up the planning one?
Yeah, I can pick up on just to add to a couple of those points there. So as Andrew said, with the cadets, the MOD are meeting with them this week, and we are involved in those meetings as well, and we'll look to do everything that we can to support their continued use of a different part of the site. The advice service, Migrant Help, will be available to people, but just to underscore Andrew's point, because we've got welfare officers on site, because we've got Home Office assurance teams on site, then if any issues are identified, then we will be able to step in and support people in a better way on that site. And as regards planning, we will have an appropriate planning in place before occupation, and we're currently working through that approach, so we can't share any further details on that at this point.
I'm sorry, are you intending to make a planning application, or are you intending to use Section 19 under the General Permitted Development Order? What is your intention, please?
We're working through that currently, so we cannot comment any further and cannot comment publicly at this point on the application that we will or won't make, but we will have appropriate planning in place prior to application.
And that is one of those areas, Chair, which is subject to ministerial decision.
Right, thank you. I've got Councillor Redmond now, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I first of all thank the Home Office representatives to come today? I think they've done a great job in it. They've actually appeared and actually have tried hard to answer everybody's questions, and I think that should be said, because I don't really relish their position in terms of actually sitting there, which they've done for 2 hours, and answer the questions they are. Some of what's been said has really helped me understand the situation far, far better than I actually understood before, and have answered questions that clearly need to be answered. But I think they should take away the fact that certainly in my 35 years there as a councillor, I have not seen the sort of response that we've had from our public within Crowborough and in the area. It has been huge. Some of it has been very damaging to everybody concerned. Hopefully we as a council have also understand that, and you understand as well from the Home Office, it's fine to write to our officers and say they're having strictly confidential meetings. I've worked with the officers in this council for all these years, and for them to actually get things which are strictly confidential, they're good officers. They've done well over many, many years. We're one of the few councils in this area of England that is financially stable. We've actually done a good job for many, many years, and the officers have. And to actually put them in a position of having something that's strictly confidential, and yet you've listed today the sort of things that you expected to happen. What the hell does strictly confidential mean when you expect them to have done all sorts of meetings with people? I'm one of the few that wasn't told. I didn't know anything about it until it came in the press. And I think that's wrong. There should have been far better discussion that went on, and that perhaps that's an issue within our own council for the future. But clearly we should understand and try to help. You've said, talking about enlisting and helping from the voluntary sector. I'm sure they don't know. How can you say these sort of things when they don't even get involved? You pointed out that the Afghans and Ukrainian people have come, etc. They've been under some sort of positive control. We've known what's going on. I still have a Ukrainian family living with me now, 3.5 years later. We do our best in this area to help people, but you in the Home Office have got to get it better. You've got to be able to actually do things in a way that's more meaningful and understand the concerns and the way that we operate within an area of Sussex that has been well run and is. And in terms of the health procedures, I have a wife who's a retired GP. You have clearly got to actually understand what the requirements are. And we've heard in the last few days that these people are just going to be added to local lists for GPs and so on. People in this area can't get appointments. 4 weeks later, we're still trying to talk to people, talk to the GPs. So unless there's some positive way going forward, it's not helping us. People are concerned, and in terms of the being inundated, as all of us have, I'm sure, with emails of people's personal concerns over the last few weeks, it's just been ridiculous. We can't answer these questions, and we're not in a position to do it. And people are honestly frightened. I think that's the word, frightened. So I would ask you please to actually think about what you do and the way you operate into the future with these sort of concerns. And clearly we've got some answers today, but we've still got answers that we're going to think of and take away what's been said today and consider it further. So I think that's the sort of message in terms of the way you operate into the future. I know a lot of it is political answers that I'm sure you can't answer any more than many people, but the government has got to consider what it's doing in terms of the influx of people coming in. And this is something for the future. In terms of something that was said earlier about the financial package to the district council, I have absolutely, even though I've listened to what was being said, I have absolutely no idea what that financial package is all about. What are we going to spend it on? It doesn't make sense. So unless I'm sure there've been things saying, why is the council being bribed to actually do what? Shut up? Carry on? I don't know. I don't understand it. So that's something that will need further discussion going forward. But for goodness sake, take away what's been said today. Listen to what's been said, listen at the concerns and listen at the way it's been handled and look at what's really happened, because we clearly need help as a council, and the people in our area, in the Crowborough area, need reassurance as to the way it's going to be handled in a proper professional way. And you know, whatever's going to happen, we've got to actually understand it and be able to discuss it in a meaningful way. Sorry, Chairman, for your help on that.
Can I just say, I'm sure that, you know, Councillor Redmond's language in some of what he just said is sort of rhetorical language. You know, obviously, if there are payments coming to the council, it would be hugely beneficial both to yourselves as the Home Office and also to us as councillors and to the wider community to know exactly what they are and what they are intended for. And I think, you know, the first I heard of them was in a video, a social media video that was put out by our MP. So, you know, the lack of transparency breeds suspicion, and you know, I wouldn't blame members of the public to think that the Home Office were essentially trying to pay us to take these asylum seekers into our community. And I know that that is not the case for this district council, but you know, perceptions matter, and it's incredibly important that in future these things come out willingly and transparently, because I don't think there's a lot of there's not been a lot of transparency in this entire process, and that has been part of the problem. Councillor Owen Williams, I've got Councillor Primmett, and then
just a very quick point. Did you or did you not tweet that there were backhanders being paid?
Did I tweet that? No, I did not tweet that. Thank you. Right, Councillor Primmett, please.
Thank you. I've listened to everything that's been said today, and I mean, one of the points you were saying earlier is that on a day-to-day basis, it probably isn't going to cost any less to house the people in this migrant camp, although I know those figures aren't necessarily available. But the amount of time, energy, money, and refurbishment of this site to make it suitable for these asylum seekers, to me, for just 12 months, just doesn't make sense. So to be honest with you, I can see this going well beyond 12 months. The 12 months will start and it will be extended and extended and extended. And I think we need assurances that the indication that this will be used for 12 months is an actual date. From the date it starts, 12 months to the date it finishes. If we've got to have this in our community, and I know a lot of the community are very, 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 very much against this, then without all the other assurances and the total and utter mismanagement of this process by the Home Office, in my opinion, I echo what Councillor Redmond has said, I think we need some real assurances from the Home Office that this is only going to be for 12 months if we have to have it. And to me, I can't see it lasting 12 months. It's going to go on until it's suddenly ended, and I can't really see for 12 months this is going to really save any money whatsoever.
Let me pick up, if you're happy for me to chair that last point. All of our planning is based on using the site for 12 months from the point at which the first service user, first asylum seeker arrives. There are no plans at this point to go beyond that. This is where, as a civil servant, I'm often asked to give a guarantee that it wouldn't be longer than that. I can't do that, but just to reiterate, the reason we intend to hand it back in 12 months' time is because the Ministry of Defence have ongoing needs for it.
Thank you. So I now have Councillor Shing online, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I think my three questions I just sent to you, Chairman, by email, I think most have been answered. But I still believe the last point Councillor Primmett said. I can't believe it's for 12 months. and is 12 months too long for our residents to bear, and for 12 months for the government taking all the procedures, requirement, change of use, planning consent, all this for 12 months, the cost not effective to the title for moving asylum seeker away from the hotel. That is not good. So I don't know what is the benefit for here. It's nothing. I don't think government title for that is also no political gain. It doesn't resolve any problem. So I don't understand the good reason for this. I know, yeah, I think Councillor Perrin mentioned the reason why 12 months is not value for the exercise for it. That exactly I sent to my chairman earlier for my question. Anyway, thank you. I hope you can answer that.
Just a very short but kind of, I guess, perhaps the most substantive point, but in short term, as the Minister echoed on the floor of the House, the benefit of using this site and Cameron Barracks is that the avoidance of using either additional hotel space or creating further pressure on the private rental sector, particularly in the temporary part of that sector. So this government is of the view that to use further hotel accommodation or create that additional pressure is very, very damaging to local communities and to the cohesion and disorder issues that we have witnessed. So that is the driving purpose for trying to use these two sites and potentially others going forward.
But the fact is, wherever we move those asylum seekers to, is nobody welcome them. So therefore, the same issue is moving in a hotel or in the camp or in somewhere else, still will have the same result. Nearby residents will not happy with it. I like a planning. Everybody want development, but not in my backyard or not in my garden. So that is a fact, isn't it? So I think if we stay in the hotel, at least whatever they're doing, if we have no financial gain for that, why is I don't think the exercise or anything is doing anything bad for our country, better for our country is not. And the asylum seeker issue will not be able to resolve within the next 12 months. So the issue is that I think Councillor Him highlighted they will be continue. You are looking for more sites to do it. So therefore, I think government can do anything. So therefore, they will continue to use the site. That's my concern.
Would you like to answer that? Or?
Sorry, apologies. I completely recognise Councillor Shing's concerns. I don't think there's much more I can add. I made the core point of the government's approach to this. The second element to that is has been threaded through the whole conversation, as in we believe that we can run these sorts of alternative accommodation in a way that is better for the asylum seekers that we have responsibility for and the communities that we run, because we believe we can run them, because of the nature of being able to run them as largely self-contained, gives us a better basis upon which to manage risks to both service users and members of the community.
Thank you. Right, so that concludes the questions from the floor. Now I have 3 councillors in the audience who've indicated that they would like to say something. And then I think you'll probably be pleased to know that we can let you go. The first councillor, I think, is Councillor Anne Newton. So, Councillor Newton, if you could come forward, please. In fact, Councillor French and Councillor Collins, if you could also come forward. There are 3 microphones up here, so we can deal with this perhaps in a quicker way.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the officials for coming today. As you can imagine, I've been in touch with the Deputy Speaker, our MP, or the MP that covers the site during this meeting. And this is just a statement I'm making just very briefly on her behalf. It's not a question, but I want to leave it in this room. The site was looked at before, and I think it is before the time of the gentleman on the screen. The Minister did look at it and rejected it. He was a Home Office Minister, and apparently he has gone public to say so. That's just a statement. Secondly, as that is the case, Wealdon can actually put a stop notice on the Home Office until they can evidence that the site has been approved and was never rejected, because it was. It's a clean and easy stop notice to clear up the validity of the site. So there are two statements which I would like to leave with this meeting, which perhaps should be looked at very quickly later. Thank you.
Thank you. I've just had an indication from Councillor Ian Tish, who's the planning portfolio holder. Councillor Tish, would you like to come forward now, if your question is directly related?
Thank you. Yes, it's not really a question; it's an answer to yet more misinformation, unfortunately, from Nasgani. A stop notice can only be served where there's been a breach of planning control, and can only be served either at the same time as an enforcement notice that relates to that breach or at a point afterwards. At present, there has been no breach of planning control. The legal provision that generally allows us to prevent anticipated breaches of planning control is an injunction under Section 187B of the 1990 Act, but that jurisdiction is taken away by another provision in the 1990 Act when the landowner is the Crown, and specifically says that no injunctions can be granted against the Crown unless the Crown consents to the grant of the injunction, or at least the bringing of the case. And that is why Brentwood Council failed in its injunction application in April 2023, failed again in the Court of Appeal in June 2023, and it also failed, although on different grounds, in its judicial review claim in December 2023. So what our MP, oh sorry, not our MP, unfortunately not mine, but what Nasgani has told Councillor Newton, who I'm sure repeats it in good faith, hopefully will now stop because it's nonsense. Thank you.
Councillor French, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just say thank you for the important points raised so far and for the questions already answered. I jointly represent a ward in Uckfield, which is just 2 train stops away and a short bus ride from Crowborough Camp. I would like to highlight that Uckfield residents are very concerned and some are truly scared. Unfortunately, some of the answers I've heard today will not allay their fears, and there's further work to be done to do that. Going on, I have a few questions of my own. Firstly, to the Home Office. Clear Springs have very recently had problems with staffing disputes at the Wethersfield site. The staff there have reported abuse, including being spat upon, which led to many of them refusing to turn up for their shifts. How will the Home Office ensure that the Crowborough Camp are safe, the Crowborough Camp staff are safe and have the correct PPE, etc.? And will there be a method for would-be whistleblowers to report issues directly with the Home Office in confidence without fear of jeopardising their positions? And I'd also like to know, will the staff have living accommodation on site? And I'll read all my questions in one hit. Will the asylum seekers be given free travel passes, i.e. for buses and trains? Will they be provided with free taxi rides to appointments? I do have a second part, which is more to the council and officers, so that's all to the Home Office. Thank you.
Chair, you ready for us to come in? I might get
Please,
Dave to come in.
Yeah, please.
Go for it, Dave. You could.
Yeah, just picking up some of those points. So no staff will be accommodated on site, but they will be a staff presence there 24/7. So there won't be any staff living in. Transport is provided for medical appointments. So absolutely yes. And we will make sure we've got a Home Office oversight and assurance team that will be on site and will make sure that the site is running in line with our contractual requirements and that it runs really well. So that should hopefully give you some assurance around how the site will work in terms of the oversight of our provider and making sure that they deliver in line with requirements.
Councillor French, just the flip side of what Dave talked about in terms of transport to medical visits there, we do not issue bus passes.
Thank you for those answers. The next part is up to the council, really.
Councillor French,
yes.
we're going to have the council after the break.
Okay.
So if you could hold questions that you'd like to put to the council until after the break, and then we can let the Home Office.
I do have to leave at 1:45, so hopefully I'll have a chance to do that. Thank you.
Yep. Councillor Collins, please.
Thanks, Andrew. It's a question, two questions for the Home Office. I think they're fairly straightforward questions. And thank you for turning up today, guys. I can't imagine that it was top of your list of favourite things to do on a Monday morning. You've made it very clear that no decision has yet been made to use Crowborough Camp. So I've got a very simple question. How will residents and this council know when that decision has been made? And can you reassure me and the residents of Crowborough that it will not be by a coach full of asylum seekers driving through the gates of the camp? And then Councillor Cox and others have asked various questions about what happens if somebody leaves the system, leaves the process. I'd like to understand, if somebody voluntarily leaves the camp and breaks contact with your service provider, what happens? Do they just get on the bus to our local city and join the black economy there, and we all just shrug our shoulders and say, hey ho, well at least we're no longer paying the cost of accommodating them in Crowborough, because I suspect that there are some costs, financial and societal, being paid by whichever community they end up in. And, like Councillor Cox, I worry about the costs to them, because they will be extremely vulnerable individuals at risk of exploitation somewhere a long, long way away from Crowborough. So, when will the decision get made? How will we know? And what happens if someone gets on that bus and travels into the black economy in a much larger place than Crowborough?
I'll start with, thank you for that. I'll start with the first chunk, and I might come to Dave on the second. A bit of process speak, if you can bear with me. It is the Home Office's accountability to decide when we go live or if we go live and the factors that affect that. In effect, what I, as the official level accountable officer, do is we start to monitor go and no-go decisions. And this is exactly what we did with Braintree District Council. So we will run that process and we will try and be as clear as possible with Trevor and other colleagues represented here about the decisions that we are working through and about the likely go live time that gives us. So we will be engaging on a weekly basis with those officials about the sorts of things that we are monitoring. And as I think one of the very questions were about the roles and responsibility of the county council with regards to public health and so on. So there are fundamental issues that we need to work through with them. That will mean that your officials and therefore your elected leaders will be able to understand the process we're going through, and there will be a point where we say, at this point in time, here is our go live date, and the engagement mechanisms that we have talked about needing will wrap around that so that we can ensure that we can in a safe way engage your community members about it. Now, this is part, there may be decisions about what is a safe way of communicating that go live. If we publicise to all to everybody that we are going live on this Tuesday or Wednesday, that could give rise to a difficult situation which yourselves and policing colleagues may advise against. But that is exactly the sort of the balanced judgment that we will need to make. I absolutely have no wish for either you or your constituents to be caught out by this, but I absolutely don't want them also to have to be moving around their neighbourhoods around an unmanaged period of unrest. I hope that doesn't sound like an equivocating. I hope that sounds like I'm describing a balanced judgment that we will make with you. Dave,
Can I just interject there for a second? Thank you for that answer. But there is a bus stop directly outside that camp that is used on a daily basis by children. And there's also a number of new build homes that share the access to the A26. So whilst I appreciate that it may cause a logistical issue for you to inform us when the camp is going to be used, I would respectfully suggest that that is your problem, and that the community deserve to know so that they can take whatever measures they see fit, depending on their perspective. It seems to me that that is the least you can do to let us know when the day one of when that camp will have asylum seekers in it.
I think I completely agree. And if there is a viable way for making sure that specifically people who want to go about their lives in the direct vicinity need to, whatever viable way we can find of doing that, that will be our driving intent. Dave, I think that left question about
Andrew
the
from the Home
economy.
Office. Can I just push back on that? What's a viable way? Because that suggests that if there isn't a viable way of doing that communication, then that communication will not take place.
So I don't think there's much more. So in previous experience we have had in different settings, we have found viable ways to take the first occupants on board in a very, very quiet way. But of course, we're in Wethersfield, we're talking about a site which has a lot more rurality around it. I guess the easiest way for me to have responded to your question would be to give you a shorter answer, which is yes, we will tell people, but I could be wrong. Obviously, we have houses right on the main gate, so it may be that we have much less room to manoeuvre, and it may well be that there's simply no other way other than saying to a number of community members, we are going live in this way on these days. So if that's what it takes, we will do that.
You can colour me astonished that is the response.
So I'm happy to keep going on it. If as a group of partners, the only way to make that work for people on the doorstep is to tell them we are going to do this on this day in this way, then we'll do that. And we are some weeks away from going, if there are a set of factors which would make publicising the go live more damaging, then I will not do that. So I could duck this and say, here is a black and white answer. There is not a black and white answer, and I can't make that judgment for the benefit of your constituents without talking to your officers, to policing, and so on. But I'll stop there. I probably might not. It's an extremely fair question. I'm not in any way challenging why it should be asked, but at this point, I can't give anything other than a balanced answer to that.
If I can then just follow up with one final question, Andrew.
Yeah, of course.
Can you give this committee, Wealdon District Council in general, and residents of this district, your assurance that there are currently no asylum seekers occupying the camp, because it is a constant rumour that
there's absolutely no, there is no asylum seekers there. We would have no legal basis to do that. Yeah, absolutely none. Thank you for that question.
I believe Councillor Collins did ask you 2 questions.
I think Dave was going to ask Dave to come in on that.
I think in the interest of time, we could probably follow up on that. That's been a repeated question quite a number of times, which is, what are our processes when somebody chooses not to stay on site and or breaks contact? So I think, with your permission, we'll pick that up in writing later today.
Thank you very much, and I will circulate that to the council. Now, Councillor Millwood has moved from over there to no, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, it's fine. I wasn't sure if you could see me, that I wanted to ask something. I'm Councillor Milden, the Deputy Leader of the Council, and also have the portfolio for communications. So I do appreciate the clear statements today of regret that the lack of communications has caused the difficulty it has, and just want to be really clear that it does, it has become a safety issue in our community, that the sense of people not being able to trust authorities is exacerbated, and then the vacuum for misinformation has been really severe. So I do just want to take this opportunity while you're here. It's the first time I've met with you. I really appreciate you coming. I appreciate your doing your jobs, and thanks for coming and for giving us the answer you have. I just want to be absolutely clear that some of the misinformation that's been coming our way, and it was from the moment of the leak, was that we were in secret negotiations with you, had agreed to this plan formally, that we had a decision-making role here, and this has caused threats to the leadership of this council and to other members, and it has caused a sense of real distrust in our community. I have communication and community in my portfolio. There's nothing I care about more than the safety of our communities, and I'd really just like to have this absolute clarity from you, that who this decision comes from and what you'd like to say in response to that accusation of us being in secret negotiation, please.
The accountability for this, for the selection of this site and the running of its site, runs through Dave and I as officials to the Home Secretary.
Thank you.
Right, and I think with that, I will say thank you very much to you both for attending. I know it probably hasn't been easy at times or at all. And I know you've got a long week, and perhaps you've got other meetings that you'll be attending in and around Crowborough in the coming days. But with that, can I say thank you very much?
Yes.
I'd like to now take a short 5-minute break, and we will reconvene here at 25 to 1.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, welcome back, everybody. So in this part of the meeting, it's the intention to try and get some more colour around what happened in the District Council. So we have with us, we have Councillor James Partridge, the leader, we have Councillor Rachel Millwood, the deputy leader, we have Mr Trevor Scott, the CEO, and then obviously we have Mr Bending as Director of Place. So can I just open this straight up to the floor of the committee? Does anyone have any questions? Trevor, would you like to, Mr Scott?
Chair, I just wondered if it would be helpful just to run through a little bit of a chronology, because I think there's been a number of questions asked about meetings and who was in attendance and when they all took place. So I just thought it might help just to kind of put a bit of clarity around that, if that helps. So just to put things in perspective, so the first we heard about contact from the Home Office was on the 10th of October. We were invited to a meeting email at 10:36 in the morning inviting us to a midday briefing. So we had a huge amount of notice. And as I've made absolutely clear, that was an in-confidence briefing. That meeting took place at midday with myself, other senior officer from Wealdon District Council and East Sussex County Council. So I think that's been established. That meeting took place, what was covered within it. I think just for brevity, there was then a site visit on the 15th of October, which I think the Home Office referred to, which myself and Mr Bending attended. In attendance there again were East Sussex County Council together with representatives from the Home Office and the Ministry of Defence. And then I think there were reference to third meetings. What's really helpful just to clarify is that one of the actions that arose from those initial discussions was the creation of what's now being referred to as an operational working group. That's a meeting that brings together partners across the sectors. So ourselves, county, police, fire, I think are open to it, health, together with the Home Office in order to start having some of the conversations around what needs to happen on site and all the things that members have rightly questioned the Home Office about this morning. So the first meeting of that group took place on the 23rd of October, and then they're scheduled to take place every week. So there's been one on the 30th of October and one on the 7th of November, and then take place thereafter. So I thought it was just helpful just to kind of clarify, because I think there's been some misunderstanding as to which meetings we've been involved in, which they haven't, and that, just to clarify, those are the meetings that we've been formally involved in.
Thank you. Committee members, does anyone have anything that they would like to ask? Councillor Benton, yeah.
It's a response to what Mr Scott has just explained to us. Now, I fully understand that there was an urgent request to attend an in-confidence meeting, and I believe that was for officers of the council. It did not include any elected members. But did I not hear the Home Office representative say twice that the attendees were encouraged to share this information with the stakeholders, I think was the word used? Can you please clarify that for me?
No, I don't think it was encouraged to share with stakeholders. So what we did post that meeting was to follow usual protocols when we get briefed confidentially by government on issues, which is not an uncommon thing from my time as Chief Executive, is that we're allowed to discuss the matter with other partners who are party to those conversations. So for instance, with East Sussex County Council, and also we could brief the leader of the council, which we did. So that took place, and has been clarified by the Home Office. Our job then at that point is part information gathering to try and find out what is going on, part to impart local knowledge and information to the Home Office so that they can take that into account. And as I think Mr Larter described our stance as being professional but extremely challenging. I think that's a fair reflection on the stance that we've taken, because we raised with them a number of points of concern about the site in order to make sure that the Home Office were aware of some of the local concerns that have rightly been vocalised today at the committee, but also around some of the operational issues that might arise if there's an impact in relation to statutory responsibilities for ourselves and for partner agencies. So we've been really clear that those were kind of some of the points that we wanted to raise with them. So we wanted to understand what was going on through information gathering. We provided an element of professional challenge to the proposed decision of them, and also then went into a phase of saying, well, okay, if the Home Office do press ahead, how best can this site be operated in order to mitigate the impacts on the local community? So we've kind of been twin tracking, I suppose, an element of challenge as to whether or not this decision actually should formally be taken, but if it is going to be taken, how does one work most effectively as a partner in order to minimise the impact of the site and on local communities? So that's been our job.
Sorry to keep bashing on this point. So a decision was made by the attendees of that meeting not to share with the Cabinet of Wealdon District Council at that time. Am I correct?
So no, it wasn't a discussion point with attendees on the 10th. We were given an in-confidence briefing and we followed usual protocols, which was to then brief only the leader and the portfolio holder at that particular point. And part of the conversation we were having and the challenge we were having with the Home Office was that they were due to share with us a comms and engagement plan for us to input into And part of the conversation we were having with the Home Office is, right, what's the appropriate point at which we can then brief more widely than that to bring in particularly local ward councillors, to bring in the town council, to bring in the voluntary sector, range of other people who we recognise would need to be brought into the conversation in advance of it being made public. So those were the conversations we were having with the Home Office. We were assured that we would be provided a comms and engagement plan in advance of any public announcements being made so that we could contribute that sort of information into that plan to try and obviate everything that has happened in reality on this situation as a result of that information being broken in advance of us being able to do that.
Thank you very much indeed. I fully understand.
Councillor Lunn.
Thank you. Just a really brief question. Everything that we've heard this morning would suggest that no one knew that this news was going to break on the 28th of October. However, it's my understanding that there was a briefing in Crowborough to certain councillors on the 25th, Saturday the 25th, and I'm just confused how that could happen if no one knew that the news was going to announce on the 28th.
Who are you directing that question to, Councillor Lunn? The floor. Yeah.
Someone must have been involved in that briefing. Someone must have been involved in that briefing on the 25th in Saturday in Crowborough.
Chair, I can confirm no officers were involved in that briefing, if there was a briefing.
I didn't suggest...
No,
yeah,
but because Councillor Lunn, you said you weren't sure who you were directing the question, and I've been answering
I'm
the questions.
not directing it at officers.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, can I have a quick point? Apparently the screen is saying that this is about waste, so if officers can just update the agenda online. Fantastic. I'm only going by what I was told. Thank you.
So can we get some clarity as to whether or not certain councillors were briefed about this on October the 25th, Saturday, October the 25th? Anyone?
I wasn't.
No?
I wasn't there.
No. I found out on the 28th.
I mean, I've known since September because it was all over local Facebook at the end of September that this was in the air, but there was no confirmation. But I found out that it had leaked out on the Monday, either Monday night or the Tuesday morning via the BBC, I think, as most people did. But no one at Wealdon gave me any information at all.
Sorry to come back, but those that were on the briefing, the emergency briefing that we had on the 28th with the leader, it was actually raised at that point, and it was confirmed that the leader had actually shared information with the ward councillor, I believe, and other members in Crowborough on that Saturday. So I'm surprised no one could remember that, because that was, I'll say, that was open in that.
The ward councillor would be Councillor Martin Everett. That's where the camp sits.
I can answer this, Chair. It wasn't on the 25th, and it wasn't a briefing. The Alliance Crowborough District Council meet regularly, and at one of our regular meetings, the rumours to which Councillor Owen Williams has already referred were discussed, and it was one of those conversations where I had to decide, do I just sit here like a lemon or not? And so I said that, all I said was that the Home Office is considering the site. That's all I said.
And I can confirm that.
Thank you. I mean, I appreciate, Councillor Owen Williams, that this item, a story was run in a local Crowborough newspaper suggesting that the Home Office was potentially looking at this site. That was That was a paper that was distributed across Crowborough in September, and that story, I understand, has caused people to lose house sales. It's caused, rumours. We're not in the business of spreading rumours here, so I had actually asked Mr. Bending the preceding week, before the 28th of October, whether there was any validation at all that the Crowborough camp was going to be used, and he will come in here in a second if he wants to. But if memory serves, the response that I received was something along the lines of, as soon as we have something that we can share with you, we will let you know.
Can I ask you on that point? Do you ask, was it going to happen, or was it being considered? Because they're two different things, and lots of sites, I understand, were being considered. So in terms of your question to Mr. Bending, were you asking if it was definite or if it was an option? Because we all knew it was an option.
I'm just going to get you my exact question. I asked, just bear with me for a second.
20th
I
of
asked,
October at 10 past 11.
Can you keep me informed if you hear anything at all in respect of Crowborough training camp being used to house migrants? And that was as a result of the rumour, and I wanted confirmation from within the District Council whether or not we knew anything.
So you were asking more about the possibility than a decision having been made, I would say, from that.
I've just read you exactly what I said.
Anything
Councillor.
at all to me means a possibility rather than a decision.
Yes, and obviously that was on the 20th of October, so 10 days after the meeting with the Home Office confirming that they intended to use the site, and 2 days before a letter was sent to Mike Tapp, MP, by this council. So I can surmise that Mr. Bending was keeping,
I know I keep interrupting, but basically, from my understanding of a long questioning session today, they still haven't decided.
That's something which you can surmise from what they said.
Does anybody disagree with me? They said that towards the end of the session. They said, we still haven't decided. We're intending to do it, but we're still doing our checks.
Councillor Owen Williams.
Councillor Wilson.
I asked, can you keep me informed if you hear anything at all in respect of Crowborough training camp being used to house
I get that. All I'm saying
migrants?
is it's still not confirmed.
I'm not having an argument with you about this, Councillor Owen Williams,
I
okay?
would never argue with you.
So it appears that the council did know at that time. Now, I don't think that officers should have been the ones to break it to us. I think that should have been the political leadership to break it to us, not the officers. But I suppose that goes to Councillor Lund's question. And now we know that certain councillors were told on the 25th in an informal meeting, albeit. Councillor Cox.
I'm sorry, I know, but I can't accept that. And I think my view is as important. We were in an informal meeting, and what we talked about, the possibility of it, there was no decision. We hadn't been informed officially. There was the same possibility that always had been, but maybe we were going to hear soon. There was no official information that this was definitely happening.
Councillor Lund.
I'm just going to interject really quickly. Maybe you were in that meeting, I was in that meeting on the 28th, and we had all this conversation. Unfortunately, that's not recorded, so we've got no evidence, but that was clearly talked about. And you know that, I know that, so you're smiling. So we're going to go around in circles. This is not necessarily helpful for our residents, and it should be for our residents that we should be focused on, not the politics.
So what is the point you're coming to?
My point is that there was some sort of briefing or advisory notice given during that Saturday.
No, not at all. Let me just say it again.
Councillor Owen Williams.
Okay, no, you're in charge of the meeting. Please tell me if I can speak.
Councillor Owen Williams, please. I think we can address this with a question to Councillor Partridge. I can see both your hands. I will come back to you. Councillor Partridge, did you inform other Crowborough councillors about the use of Crowborough camp on the meeting that you've just, on the day of the meeting that you've just referenced?
I said the Home Office is considering use of the camp.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, Councillor Cox, please.
Yep. Just for clarity, I'm not a Crowborough councillor, so therefore was not in said meeting and had no prior information of this until it was public in the public domain. But for the sake of this debate and for the sake of everything, the officers acted in accordance with what they were, the full accordance that they were thinking is right, that they should not be informing other people. So when they said to you, we'll let you know when we can, Chris Bendin acted in accordance with what he thought was the right thing. So therefore, the kind of information that's been going out online that the officers are corrupt or doing anything should be struck straight away. And I know that you are of the same kind of mind that the officers shouldn't be in question about this. I think they've acted appropriately, and I think that should be on the record. As for the debate I've just seen, which, you know, it's a bit unedifying for this council to see everyone going different directions and everyone you. From what I gather, the papers said that there's a chance that the camp would be in place. The conversation is that there's a chance that the camp... this is important.
Can I just cut you off for 1 second here? So the time is now 1 o'clock, which means that the meeting started at 10 and it's gone on for 3 hours, right? I would like to get to the end of this item, but it will require a vote to extend the meeting. So can I have a proposer and seconder?
I'll propose
to
that
accept, thank you very much. And can I have a vote of the committee now to extend the meeting? Sorry, who was the seconder? Was Gareth Owen Williams. Thank you very much. Please continue.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that. So the actual nub of the kind of question, from what I gather, and I want clarity from all the other councillors, because I'm quite a novice in what's happening right now, because I'm not a Crowborough councillor, is that the officers were all fine, and the councillors discussed the fact that Crowborough site might be used. Am I reading that correctly? Because from what I gather, that was public knowledge in a paper that the site might be used. A rumour, but in the paper, so therefore the paper has put it out there, so a logical discussion between councillors of an area to say, do you think it could be used, is quite logical, and I don't see that there's any kind of impropriety there. And from what I gather from the evidence just given, is that there was a confirmation from the leader of the council that yes, it could be used as a site. It's may be used. Maybes are still maybes are maybes. It's always been a maybe because it's a site in Sussex that they could use, and it's in the public domain that the site exists. I don't see what we're splitting hairs on. I mean, for the sake of you're saying the meeting's taken some time. I think that this is real politicking and point scoring for no reason. Like, the officers have done everything they should do. Councillors discuss things like councillors do. And no one broke any confidence, because nobody said, yes, it's happening, this is going to happen on this date, because we still don't know whether it's ever going to blinking happen. So for the sake of everyone watching, and I just think that this is just pure politicking for no reason, and no one's going to gain anything from this other than the fact that the general public are going to think that we're too busy pointing fingers at each other than actually arguing about the fact that, are they going to be safe? Are we going to deal with modern-day slavery? Are we going to tackle all the good things that we actually, as a group, collectively, all agree on?
Councillor Cox, do you have a
Yes, the question is, to all councillors, do we think that this is an appropriate way to be behaving, or should we actually work together? Because we all want the best for our community and make sure that if migrants do come in, they're safe, but also that our communities are safe. I was really proud of the council for the last 2 hours, and now we're going into point scoring. It's so silly, and it's not what I go into politics for.
Thank you very much. Thank you. In response to that, I can obviously keep this conversation going, and the reason that I think it is important to have a conversation, a respectful conversation, is that this council is committed to openness, honesty and transparency. It is a core tenet of the council strategy. Now, that does not mean that uncomfortable questions will not be asked, but this is a scrutiny committee. We are trying to understand what happened. We are trying to understand what happened both for our own sake, Councillor Cox, but also for the sake of the community. Because criticism has been levied at this council, right? And it is important that we get some clarity around what happens, because if we don't have that, it's going to be very difficult to build on it and move forward. Councillor Coleman, thank you.
I can just talk from my experience, and my experience of it was that it was handled in an incredibly professional manner, and the first I heard of it was at the all-members briefing on the 28th, where I was given full information from both the leaders and the officers.
Got Councillor Redmond, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's more what Councillor Cox has said is absolutely valid. We need to go forward. But equally, we've heard that there has been an operational working group sitting on the 23rd, the 3rd, the 7th of November, 3 meetings. The things that people are interested in and want to know is how safe they're going to be, how their facilities are going to be served, how the NHS is going to operate. We've heard things like the doctors are going to have these people put onto their service, and yet these are people who can't even speak English in many cases. All these operational things that could help and help people to understand what's going on have not been raised. That's not been said. And yet I've heard that our officers, and who else I've no idea who, have attended at least 3 meetings since this all became apparent. What is going on? Where are we? Have we raised, as a council, all the concerns that we should be raising through these other groups as well that have to provide all the facilities? I've heard nothing. So I don't understand where we've got to, what's really going on. And people are just concerned that we in Wilden, and I'm being accused personally of not having done my duty in terms of making sure that things are really, really going on and being investigated and being discussed by the appropriate people, whether the voluntary services are now being keyed up to do these things. I've heard nothing of this, and yet I gather there's been 3 meetings.
But excuse
so
me,
what
sorry,
is happening?
if there was the meeting on the
Sorry,
20th...
I'm not talking to Councillor Coleman at the moment. I'm just asking questions as to what is happening with these 3 meetings and what is really happening, taking us forward from the point where everybody is very, very concerned to solve those concerns. And I just don't know.
Can we have a summary of are those were the 3 meetings that you've had minuted? Is there documentary evidence of what was discussed, what was agreed? Can we understand that, please?
Yeah, so I can talk to the Officer Working Group meetings. I think the key thing here, these are meetings chaired by the Home Office at this stage, although they have indicated a potential willingness to pass over the chair to one of the local agencies in time. They're not minuted meetings. They're informal meetings. But Brian, Councillor Redmond, to answer your point, as you heard Andrew Larter say earlier, we have been asking repeatedly many and more of the same questions that you've been asking today of the Home Office. We have been struggling, as you have this morning, to get detailed answers to many of those questions. The FAQs document that we published just after the briefing, the all-member briefing on the 28th, was the best answers we'd been able to glean from the conversations that we'd been having with the Home Office at that time in response to the many of questions that we'd been asking on behalf of the authority. And at that time, we've been pushing the Home Office to produce their own document. We've published information effectively on their behalf of trying to fill that vacuum of information that clearly exists in the community. Now, as matters have moved forwards, they have now gone forward and published their own FAQs, which is really helpful. But we know, as we've heard this morning and the conversations we have with them and other partner agencies have with them, there are many, many more questions that the public will reasonably want to have answered by the Home Office. And so those meetings are predominantly for us to seek to try and hold the Home Office to account, to draw those answers out and to ensure that they're published. A recent example, we met last Thursday, so to give you a bit of a flavour of the detail of the meetings, we met last Thursday, and of course on Friday and on Saturday there were protests planned, and so we heard, and I'm not going to go into operational details, but we heard briefings from Sussex Police around their work with the protest organisers and counter-protest organisers to understand the impact on our community. We fed into that our concerns around the processes around that. And we also discussed the meetings this week, including this meeting, to try and ensure that we had attendance from relevant agencies at this meeting. So they're that level of detail. They're not meetings where this district council is making decisions. We are not making decisions in this space. We are asking questions and clarifying our operational responsibilities, as are those other partner agencies there with us. And as Mr. Scott's already said, that's the whole public sector coming together. So NHS, police, county council, fire service, and other agencies as well. So hopefully that helps give some flavour to what those meetings are about. They are not decision-making forums in the way that one might expect. Thank you.
Councillor Lunn, please.
Thank you. I wasn't expecting to come around so quickly. I'm actually like to change tack a little bit on the conversation, and I want to pick up the reference to the 22nd of October letter to Mike Tapp, and make cross-reference to the response from the Home Office regarding the cadets that are currently on site. Now, there's been a lot of, again, rumours and speculation about the safety of the young people and the cadets that are on site. I've heard rumours that the Home Office have implicated that actually the cadets could continue to use the site in an allocated area, and a lot of parents have raised huge concerns about their daughters and sons, you know, working in army fatigues on the site, in correlation with these asylum seekers that are on site as well. And when I read the letter, so we heard the Home Office saying that that might be a case, that might be a facility, but when I look at the letter of the 22nd of October, it says, "We are pleased that your team recognises the need for service users to have a range of activities available on site." That's taken. "We ask that you see this as an opportunity to leave a legacy for the MOD and cadets who will return in 12 months. So that implies the cadets are not going to be on site. They're going to be moved elsewhere. Could someone clarify what is the decision? What's been said about that?
Councillor Partridge.
Well, I think it was David Harding, but one of the Home Office guys talked about that this morning, and I heard him say that they were looking at keeping them on a different part of the site, but that if that didn't work, then they would fully support them going somewhere else. That's what I heard him say. But
do you have a follow-up?
So briefly, I heard the same thing, Councillor Partridge. I do agree with you, but given what's been written in the 22nd of October letter, which is signed by yourself, it clearly states that the cadets will be moving on. So I'm just confused about what's been done. What is the situation? Because the parents of those young people are very, very concerned, and there's a lack of communication. Going back to what we talked about, transparency, honesty, we need clarification on these issues.
Well, I absolutely understand that, and as a former honorary colonel of the Kent Army Cadet Force, I completely understand it. And things have obviously moved on. I don't know where I know the question of cadets was raised on the 10th of October, the very first meeting. As I understand it was raised. I don't know what was said then. There are huge practical problems with moving a cadet detachment, which is actually the last thing you want to do in practice, in real life. As a cadet officer, that's the last thing you would want to do. So there will be a balance. So I don't know why I was sitting in this corner over here, but there's a balance, because it would be better not to move them. There's risk of the detachment failing if it moves. Experience says that. But if, as you rightly say, there's risk of leaving it there. As former chairman of the South East Reserve Forces and Cadets Association, I'm sure they're on it, because they're responsible. Actually, it's their job. They provide the property, and I'm quite sure they will be working very hard to find a good solution. And it won't be easy, and it will move around until somebody finds the answer.
Mr. Scott.
I mean, Chair, just to clarify, the letter of the 22nd represents the information that we were given by the Home Office and the Ministry of Defence at that point in time. At the site visit on the 15th, they were clear that their intention was to relocate the cadets to another location. That's why that question was then put within the letter on the 22nd of October. It now transpires they are considering alternative options to that, potentially to keep them on site, and if that fails, to then move them off site. But at the point in time that letter was written, that was the information that had been provided to us by the Home Office, and therefore it was right that we were testing it with them.
I think it would be useful if we could try and seek some, some more clarity, or just at least keep abreast of the situation, because the cadet force that operates there is, it's an important part of the sort of social fabric of the town, and it's a very interesting thing for young people to be able to do, and it's an important thing for them to continue to be able to do. So to the extent that we can, I'd like to keep that as a point of focus in further conversations going forward that the District Council may have. Does that answer your question, Councillor Lunn? Thank you. All right. So Councillor Primmitt, please.
Thank you. Having listened to the sort of course of events and how things have passed, what we really, I think, need to be challenging here is when councillors should be made party to confidential matters in this council. I think, obviously, we're all aware we were all told too late, because none of us had any idea of what was going on. I know the news probably leaked unintentionally. Who knows with government? It leaks all the time. It's like a sieve. But none of us are prepared. None of us were prepared. So we get hit with emails, abuse, and everything else under the sun. So in some ways, we need to consider protecting ourselves from potential impacts. And I think we need to consider or review what and when confidential information, however confidential that is, and there may be degrees of confidentiality, I don't know, that relevant councillors, whether in this case it should have been the Crowborough councillors were made more aware of it earlier than they were, or whether it is the full council generally is made aware of certain confidential matters on a more timely basis. I don't know, and I don't know how we put that in process. But I think a takeaway from me for this is that needs to be reviewed. I don't think officers can just keep all the confidential information to themselves and not release it, when potentially you could put councillors at risk, as we could have happened in this case. A number of people have said they've been threatened, whether by email or physically abused. I don't know the details, but I think we need to certainly consider whether that should be reviewed going forwards.
I wouldn't disagree that it's important to have certainly clarity amongst the member body when things of this nature, and I hope we don't get anything similar to this in the future. To be honest, I'd like to go back to answering questions about bin collection, but this is something which I never thought we'd have to deal with as a district council. It is in many ways sort of unprecedented for Wealden, but I do think that it would have been incredibly helpful, and I would hope that the leadership of the council understands that it would have been helpful to share on a confidential basis, at least with the councillors, the plans around the use of the camp, or the implied plans, or however you choose to phrase it, around the use of the camp, and as much information as possible, such that if a leak was to happen, we'd be prepared. That leak happened on the 28th. I became aware of a public meeting in Crowborough that was being organised not by Crowborough Town Council, not by Wealden District Council, just by some concerned residents, and I thought I'd go along to it to see what it was like. And the information vacuum at the time was such that there was a huge amount of anger in that room, and I did my very best. And I recognise some of the members of the public who were at those meetings actually, and I did my very best to try and calm the situation down. We were all operating in a slightly well, it was an information vacuum to a large degree for the district councillors involved, and I think the public were rightly asking questions and fearful, quite frankly, and it would have been helpful to be able to address that. Councillor Owen Williams, is this a helpful comment or
all my comments are helpful. Yeah, let's just follow up on what you and Councillor Primrose said. I think we need to look at the perspective of this, which is that this was a Home Office operation. All they were doing were doing due diligence, checking with local authorities, services, the police and everything. We weren't making decisions, as has been pointed out. We were involved in answering their questions and just covering ourselves. This wasn't our story. So I think the most unhelpful thing in this whole hideous saga has been our local MP suddenly deciding...
I'm sorry, Councillor...
I'm sorry, this is relevant.
I'm sorry, Councillor Owen Williams.
You may not like it. You may be upset if your friends are insulted.
You're making statements.
No,
and
I'd like completely... opinions have been expressed today. My opinion is as valid as anybody else's.
I'm going to give you... look...
Are you shutting me down?
I would like you to
Are
just...
you shutting me down?
Park it for a second.
No, this is relevant because what had happened was the whole scenario changed. East Sussex County Council was never mentioned in the rhetoric. Only Wealden's leaders. So Wealden's councillors were in the spotlight immediately. Give us answers. We didn't have answers. We knew no more than they did. Where were the county councillors? Did they get pressure? No, they're still not under pressure. So what I'm saying is there was a very unhelpful intervention which shifted the narrative away from the Home Office onto local Wealden district councillors, and that is what's caused the problem because we don't have answers any more than anybody else. That is my opinion.
I would like to concur. It feels like a complete witch hunt, and it has been a horrendous couple of weeks, and it really has not helped to have both MPs pointing the fingers directly at Wealden.
I think
really unhelpful.
I think the point that the MPs have made, if I could reiterate it, is that Wealden District Council, as a planning authority. You can laugh if you like, Councillor Owen Williams.
I'm sorry, this is not a planning matter. What about health? What about education? What about social services? This is not a planning.
I would submit to you that actually the use of that camp to house 600 migrants is a material change of use. And I note that Ian Tish has now got his hand up. If you'd like to come forward, Councillor Tish, to give your view on whether or not a camp that is used on an incidental basis, suddenly housing 600 people, where all services will be provided in it, is not a material change of use.
Chair, can I, sorry, before Councillor Tish opens, before he starts talking, excuse me, Councillor Tish.
No.
In the nicest of possible ways. I'm conscious that this is a overview and scrutiny and performance committee, not a planning committee. And I am nervous that we may step way beyond the reach of this committee and put this council in a position where it cannot in future, or finds it difficult in future, to respond to a planning application should we receive one from the Home Office. We heard from the Home Office this morning that they have not yet finalised their position in this space, and so I do not want this council to fetter its position on any future action in this case. I just think it would be, we've heard statements today from various sides of the planning debate on the issue. I suspect it's probably not going to help to continue to rehearse them round and round and round. But that said, I will pass back to you, Chair.
I won't say anything about the situation here, but in both the Brentwood, RAF, Weatherly and the West Lindsey, in Lincolnshire cases, I can't remember the name of the base there, the government treated it as a change of use and gave itself permission.
The WealthNet article is about the public meeting.
Anne-Marie, you're on mute. Anne-Marie, you're off camera.
So on Friday, you said perhaps I could pick something up on Monday.
Miss Field.
It's about
Anne-Marie.
Crowborough meeting.
Can we mute the microphones on Teams, please?
She's muted now. In both those cases, the government invoked Class Q of Part 19 to Schedule 2 of the General Permitted Development Order 2015, which allows them to give themselves a change of use for up to a year. So it's probably not being, as wise as Nostradamus to predict that that's what's going to happen here if they decide to go ahead with the plan. That means that there's nothing we can do. More generally, with any Crown property, we can't ever apply for an injunction. Well, we can't ever apply for an injunction unless the Crown consents to that. We can serve notices, but we can't enforce them unless the Crown consents to that enforcement. So they're just, pieces of paper, or exhortatory, if you like, but with no actual power. And if I can return to something that Councillor Newton said to me after the meeting in relation to Ms. exhortation to serve a stop notice, this is about South Norfolk Council.
Councillor Tish, my understanding is that she's received advice from a previous immigration minister.
Well, that means absolutely nothing. Immigration ministers don't know anything about planning. The situation in South Norfolk concerned a hotel, which is private property, not Crown property, and which was currently in use for asylum accommodation. So yes, of course they could serve a stop notice there if they thought that was apposite. Completely different from the situation in Crowborough and therefore totally irrelevant. So yet more disinformation from our MP, which is really disgraceful. Thank you.
I think time will tell whether or not these things can happen. Councillor Cox, go on.
Regardless of everything else that's gone around, I actually want to just answer back to Councillor Primid. I completely agree that we should be trusted as councillors to be able to hold confidential information. But I don't think we need to know every bit of information, but to be informed that they've been approached by the Home Office would have made life a lot easier. Operational security for my family and those kind of things are something I take quite seriously. I've expressed many times that we've had threats to us, and I've also expressed that I know that other members have had things from all different parties, and I don't make this a party political thing. I think that just to know the basic information, what is need to be known, which is that they've been approached, would have been helpful. And I hope that moving forwards, on certain topics that are of grave sensitivity like this, all councillors will be looked at as proper and good to have that information. I obviously have noted also from what I've seen around, a lot of information has been shared from MPs to councillors and stuff like that, and that's kind of shaping some of the kind of interjections that we're seeing today. I think it'll be helpful actually if the council also, if you're getting information that you think is relevant for the council to know from your MP, instead of using it as kind of like tools to kind of to and fro with councillors, maybe we should just have as much information as we can so we can do the best for our communities. Because so far I've heard a lot about, we know this from this person, we've got this, and we've got this little nugget to give you in the meeting to make it the theatre of it all. But actually, we just want as much information to be able to deal with the issues that we get. But if Councillor Primit was using that as a recommendation, to say that we can get sensitive information when it's live, I would second that as if it's a motion towards this council, because I think that's crucial moving forwards. But I don't know whether that was actually proposed by him, but if it was, like I say, I'm happy to second it, because I think information of that kind of necessity should be given to councillors who I think are in the right place to not be silly and put out that information to the general public. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Owen Williams. I've got you on my list.
No, that was my interruption.
Right, okay.
You have another one if you want.
Please don't. Councillor Fairweather, please.
Right, thank you. I'd like to make a slight correction to something that Councillor Coleman says. It's not a matter of 2 MPs stirring the pot, it's 3. Dr Kieran Mullen of Bexhill and Battle has also been at it in a matter that doesn't affect his constituency.
Thank you, Councillor Fairweather. Councillor Millward.
Yeah, I just want to address this point about confidentiality. I think it's incredibly important that we understand that it is routine across all authorities to have times when briefings are done confidentially, and that the leadership is privy to information which other councillors are not. And I do think there are serious operational impacts, and I wonder actually if Mr. Scott could be more qualified than I am to talk through some of the detail of that. If we were to get to a situation where all confidential information was shared with all councillors, I think that would be a grave error. Mr. Scott, would you be prepared to explain more about the impact of that, and perhaps in your experience how in fact it is the long-term conventional approach to have confidential information stay within the leadership?
Mr. Scott, before you do that, could I ask you just to think about the reaction that the public have had to to having this being sprung on them, and also the impact on. I appreciate I will invite him in a minute, but I think part of the issue with all of this has been that this district council failed in some way to anticipate the gravity of the situation of it coming out. And when it came out, we were all demonstrably unprepared. And that is why I personally would have liked to have been informed, especially as I am a Crowborough councillor as well. So, whatever Mr. Scott's about to say, I'm sure is valid, but there are degrees of impact that information has, and this information would have been very useful to all of us, shared confidentially. And with that,
Just to come back on that though, when something goes wrong, you do need to reassess the system, but you don't necessarily rebuild the system assuming the same error happens all the time. It shouldn't have been leaked. Now, if we had leaked it first, and in fact it hadn't gone on to happen, we would have created a lot of local upset and alarm and confusion irresponsibly. So it is not, it is not responsible to leak things. But anyway, passing on.
Sorry, just to come back, I wasn't suggesting that the council leaked it. What I was suggesting is that the councillors, the elected body, membership of this council, were informed at the time and kept informed, because we would have then been much better prepared to deal with the public reaction. And, by the way, I think it would have been useful for us to be able to express our opinion as to the use of the appropriateness and the use of that camp, for whatever that's worth, because at the moment we haven't been able to do that. And the district council's position appears to have changed in the letters that it wrote to Mike Tapp, the wrong minister, and then Alex Norris, the right minister. The council's position has changed, and it has evolved, and it looks to me like the council only started to take some degree of charge of the situation. As we all know, district councils are valuable because they are some of the authorities that are closest to the residents for communications purposes. That is something which we've all discussed at length in the LGR discussions. And I just think personally, not as chair of this committee, but personally as a Crowborough councillor for Crowborough South East, I would have appreciated being informed that a camp about a mile and just over a mile from my house was going to be used to house 600 people and increase the male population of Crowborough by 6%. I think that would have been a courtesy that the leadership of this council could have extended to me, and personally I wouldn't have had a problem with a confidential briefing session with the entire membership of this council so that we would have been able to answer questions. But with that, please, Mr. Scott.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Chair. So, Chair, I think it's right to recognise the concerns that are expressed by this committee and by members, but it's also right to kind of set the context in amongst this. If you've heard from Mr. Larter this morning and myself, because it was a point of contention that we got clarity on, I was invited to a confidential briefing from the Home Office. Mr. Larter clarified that they asked us to hold that confidence for a period of time other than briefing the political leader. That's very much in convention. That's very much what we do. It's what almost all public, I think all public authorities would follow the same principle. That's what the Home Office asked. If at that point I say to him, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Larter, I'm now going to brief 45 councillors, contrary to your ask of me, it means that we run a very serious risk of not being invited to those conversations at all. And therefore, all the concerns that Mr. Larter has pointed out, we've raised in a professional but extremely challenging way to raise all the points that this committee have raised and more, and the points on behalf of our community that we're able to do in confidence behind the scenes early on in order to try and challenge the decisions that the Home Office are proposing to make. We would lose those opportunities. So we do have to hold certain things in confidence. It's also right to reflect, as I have done already at this committee, and Mr. Larter confirmed, we were asking the Home Office to produce a comms and engagement plan that was going to be shared with us for our input prior to any public announcements and statements being made, that we made the point to them that we would like their confirmation as to when we could brief local ward councillors and members of this council in advance of public information being shared. So therefore, all of those things were being factored into by the officers in those meetings with the Home Office. Therefore, we followed appropriate protocol from government to us about the confidentiality of those meetings, made the right statements, and therefore we followed all necessary and appropriate protocols. So I don't want anyone to kind of leave here thinking that in somehow we have decided to withhold information from councillors or not trusted councillors. We followed protocols, we've applied that. We were pushing the Home Office for guidance as to when we could advise all councillors in the right way. And then as soon as the information broke publicly, we held an all-member briefing that morning straight away to advise members of what we knew as a council. So I think in terms of what we've followed, the process we followed as officers, I hope is beyond reproach, and I hope members can understand the difficult position that officers are sometimes put in when we are receiving confidential briefings like that. We have to exercise an element of judgment. We follow protocol. That's exactly what we do. It's exactly what we did in this situation. And we absolutely understand the concerns of local residents. It's exactly why we've been vocalising and articulating those points to the Home Office throughout.
Thank you very much. I would say I have no criticism at all of you and your team. I think they've done very, very well. My frustration has been with the senior leadership not sharing the information with councillors. So there is no implied criticism of officers in this council. And if any officer feels that way, then I'm sorry, but it's not intended. And I'm sure the rest of the committee would echo that sentiment. But you know, communications amongst the elected, this is not the first time we've had issues with communications amongst the elected membership of this council. So that's what I say. Now, Councillor Lunn, and then I've got you, Councillor Owen Williams. Thank you.
Yeah, just want a couple of things just to pick up on Councillor Cox. I agree with you, Councillor Cox, for a change. That actually, if there is information that our MPs are sharing with us, that we should share that for the benefit of this council. And indeed, I have done that. On the 3rd of November, I shared quite a comprehensive briefing to the leader of this council. Now, his response was, I'm going to be careful with my words, woefully lacking, and I am disappointed. And since subsequent to that, I have now lost trust and value in that leadership. But that's something for me and Councillor Partridge to take up on directly. Having said that, I do share also the concerns about the wider communications, because as the Chair has rightly pointed out, this is not the first instance where this council has had difficult circumstances around communications. The last incident, we had the council tax debacle, and before that, we had the South East Water. And we had an external, consultant come in and review, and that there was going to be changes made about communications and emergency crisis management communications. And through you, Chair, I don't know what has gone wrong again regarding that, because I thought we had a plan around these sort of circumstances.
Well, perhaps we can interrogate the communications plans at a future meeting. We can add that to the work programme in the future if you so wish, Councillor Lunn. Councillor Owen Williams, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it has to be said again, this tendency to make everything a party political point-scoring exercise rather than considering the needs of our residents. It'd be really nice if we could stop doing that. What I would say is, if we had had the opportunity to talk to residents for the 2 weeks before this announcement escaped, what would we have told them? We didn't know anything. What have we been able to tell them in the 2 weeks since? Nothing, because we don't hold the secrets. It's been the 2 weeks waiting for the Home Office to answer our questions. So, yeah, we would have known there was a thing, but we wouldn't have been able to answer any questions, make any preparations. It's a bit like me saying to you, something's going to happen. What? I don't know, but it's going to happen. It's pointless. We would have just been going around like headless chickens saying, give us more. There was no more. We've had no information from the Home Office. Really, it's come out in bits and pieces, very, very slowly, very reactively, until today when we've learned a lot. So I think if we can argue about whether councillors should have been told something might possibly happen soon at some point, but at the end of the day, what would we have done with that information?
Who is that question directed to, Councillor Owen Williams?
It's part of the discussion.
Councillor Benton, please.
Thank you, Chair. Been sitting here listening. What I take from this morning's meeting and the representation from the Home Office is they will put this through. They will put this through. They will climb the mountain twice to get this proposal through. And unless this council takes up arms and does something positively about it, it will go through. Now, I've listened to Councillor Tish's legal advice. It's not advice, it's just his opinion. You can talk to a number of barristers and get different opinions on every position in law. And this council, I believe, should be engaging with the correct level of legal support to establish whether we have a reasonable chance of defending this position or not. Now, my final part of this statement, if you like, is I would like to ask Councillor Millward, is she for this camp or against this camp?
I'm happy to answer that. I've made it very, very clear publicly that I'm against this camp because I do not think it is the right way to. I don't think it's the right way to accommodate asylum seekers in these large-scale camps. I think the risks are huge to the people within the camp, and that I think it's been mismanaged absolutely appallingly for the sake of local communities. I've made that very clear publicly, and I think Councillor Partridge can probably answer your point on legal advice, which we are pursuing. Do you want to fill that in, James? Or
Yes, I agree with Councillor Benton, and we are doing that.
Chair, just to clarify for Councillor Benton, we've instructed a KC to provide us with legal advice in relation to the site. Obviously, we're in public meetings, so we won't be able to go into any of the detail right now. But we are seeking that advice on an ongoing basis with the King's Council. So hopefully, you'll agree that is the appropriate level of legal advice.
My concern, with bitter experience with this council, is that the legal opinions sought are very often guided by the scoping, and that the quality and calibre of that legal advice is not sufficient to represent accurately.
Thank you for that, Councillor Benton. But with that being said, could I ask Mr. Scott whether he will commit now today to sharing that legal advice with the membership of the council once it is received, please?
Well, Chair, we need to assess the legal professional privilege in relation to that, because we've sought advice as to what, if any, avenues are available to challenge the decisions of the Home Office. I'll come back to the committee as to the ability to share that. We haven't got any written advice, by the way, at the current time from the KC. They're considering it. It's an ongoing basis. But as you've heard, actually, the Home Office haven't issued a decision right now. So the ability to challenge a decision that hasn't been made is very, very difficult in law. Mm-hmm. So therefore, that's why it's still fairly early confidential conversations at this stage. As we've done at previous times, we have often made advice available for members to come in and read. I suspect that will be my answer to you, but I won't give that to you right now. We will come back and confirm.
Thank you very much. Councillor Benton, are you finished?
I have for the time being.
Thank you. Councillor Cox, please.
Yeah, just on comms, I'm actually, you know, we have had issues with comms, but I actually think the comms around this after the breaking of the news was actually quite good, and I want to congratulate the officers on that. I think, you know, daily updates, social media, I think that above and beyond where we've been before, I think the comms have been really good. For what we can say, because even from the presentation we had earlier, nothing is set and it's quite muddy for you guys, and to give regular updates to the public I actually think was quite helpful and made my job a little bit easier. So I'd like to actually thank the officers on record now for the level of communication that they've been doing both in social media and further abreast. So I don't actually think the comms after the issue was leaked have been that bad. I think they've been pretty good, and I think credit to the council for that.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Redmond, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quickie. I gathered what the question was to Councillor Millwood, and she gave a very direct and honest, in her opinion, answer on it. But is that the view of just Councillor Millwood, or is that a cabinet view? I was quite surprised that she made the absolute statement that she was against this camp in this way. But is that a view of just one individual member of the cabinet, or is that a distinct? Because I often find that Councillor Millwood is talking on behalf of the cabinet in many cases, particularly on YouTube and other things. So is this just her view, or is it a cabinet view suddenly that's appeared in the discussions we've just had? I was a bit confused. Maybe I could get some clarification, please.
If you read the letter, the probably easiest way to just be really clear about our position is the letter that we wrote to Alex Norris, the Minister. And that was November the 1st, I think it's November the 1st.
Sorry, when you say our, what is who's our?
It's a simple question. The answer to the question is really straightforward. It's yes.
It's the view of Councillor Partridge and everybody else on the cabinet.
That's absolutely right, and it's therefore in writing from James Partridge.
Yeah, well, I'd like James to answer. Sorry, I'd like Councillor Partridge to answer as the leader of this council, please.
Can please, can you just, each person needs to speak at once. You know, talking across each other isn't gonna help the public understand what's going on. So I appreciate everyone wants to have their say. Please, one at a time. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Chairman. I'm just asking what Councillor Millwood gave a very distinct answer. Is that the view of Councillor Partridge as the leader of the council? Because I'm never quite sure who's the leader of the council at the moment. Some of the time I'm getting quite confused. Thank you.
Councillor Redmond, I think he has confirmed that it is. And if I'm looking at him now, can you just nod to confirm your agreement? Thank you very much. He's nodding. Right. Councillor Benton, please.
Thank you, Chair. My reading of the letter that's under question is that it's not an objection. It's raising a list of concerns. That doesn't mean we're objecting. So, given what Councillor Millwood has just addressed the meeting to say she's against this camp, can I ask for a commitment from Councillor Partridge and Councillor Millwood that they will take every possible avenue open to get this proposal overturned and rejected?
In principle, yes. There is, well, this council it can only do what it has power to do and what it's allowed to do. So the answer to your question is yes, in principle, but there are limits to what we can do. And there just are.
Can I also just stress again, I think there's confusion about the letters. The letter of concerns went out on the 22nd of October. On the 31st of October, the letter begins, we are writing to state our strong objection to the decision you have taken, etc. So please do make sure you've read the two letters because they're quite distinct.
Saying something in principle is no better than saying as soon as possible. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. Just on a point of actual timeline, and it goes to the letter point. The letter of the 22nd of October was sent to Mike Tapp, who's the Migration and Citizenship Minister. There was a letter sent again to Mike Tapp on the 31st of October, which disappeared from the website. And then on the 3rd of November, we received an email from Mr. Scott saying that actually they'd identified that the correct minister to be writing to was Minister Alex Norris. It looks like the letter to Mike Tapp was then reissued. What date was that sent? Because it actually is dated the 31st of October, but I think it went on the just as a matter of correcting the factual record here. When did that letter go?
Chair, I'd need to check my emails to give you an answer, so I'll come back to you. But yeah, as I've explained to all members quite openly, Mr. Tapp was chosen originally, but in the absence of other information on the basis of his ministerial title, because the Home Office hadn't clarified who the right minister was, we'd received confirmation from the officers at the Home Office that they'd received that letter and were responding. We subsequently sent a letter on the 31st again to Mr. Tapp. We recognised shortly thereafter that it was to the wrong minister because Mr. Norris had made the announcement in between, and therefore we resent. So we, in effect, withdrew the letter to Mr. Tapp and resent the one to Mr. Norris to correct that error, which we've held our hands up and apologised for. But I'll need to tell you the exact date at which it was emailed. I imagine it was a Monday morning because that was the date that I think we sent the letter over the weekend to Mr. Tapp originally and then reissued it to Mr. Norris on the Monday morning.
Thank you. Just my confusion was only because the letter is dated the 31st of October, which was the Friday, and the 3rd of November was the Monday. So if it went on the 3rd, the letter should really be dated the 3rd. But can we just double check that any letters that are sent to government on this issue in future are actually sent to the right person? Thank you.
Possibly the date it was written is more relevant.
Thank you for that intervention again, Councillor Owen Williams. Right, I'm going to take one more question. I'm going to take one more question from Councillor Lunn, and then I'm going to suggest that.
Thank you. So I concur with what the letter said. I've read it carefully, and I can see the objections being raised, and it's they're publicly available, and I'm very grateful for that. My question to both Councillor Partridge and Councillor Millward is, if you had all these objections and concerns, why did you not raise that to us as members on the 28th when this news broke? Because during that briefing to all members, that emergency meeting, Councillor Millward was on the call and said nothing. Councillor Dan Manville, who's just walking back in the room, was actually supportive and then subsequently changed his position later on once the news came out. And Councillor Partridge, if I recall correctly, said, this is something that's being done to us, we can't do anything about it. So I would like to understand, how is it that that's what was said in our private, it wasn't a private, it's a briefing to members, all members, and yet all these letters were going on. I don't understand how that correlation of timeline can be going on.
Well, I think it goes like this. To be very careful what I say here because of legal implications, but our initial advice was, and we've heard some of it today, well, this is Crown land, so at the end of the day, the planning rules don't apply. So am I doing something? And that, as we've heard, judicial review is difficult if a decision hasn't been made. And so it wasn't looking good. After that, actually, with a lot of help from residents, some of who, well, many of whom have written very articulate letters and some very well-informed letters, it became clear to me that there might be a way forward. Might be. And that's what we're now looking at. And I have never liked the idea. And so I became very keen to investigate those routes. And the reaction in Crowborough has been very strong, much stronger than I thought it would be. And so, that's another factor. So, because I knew nothing about asylum and all of that 2 weeks ago, really nothing at all. So I've learned a lot, and I think we've all learned a lot, and so I hope that answers your question.
Does that answer your question, Councillor? Yeah. Good. Right. Councillor Fairweather, please.
Thank you. In the last speech from the Chair, there's something that I want to take issue with, please. The Chair seemed to suggest that he was inciting the leader to breach confidentiality. Would you like to clarify that, please?
Could you, what exactly are you saying, Councillor Fairweather? What do you mean inciting the leader to breach confidentiality?
That is the way it sounded to me.
Well, how it sounds to you is that's one thing, that's fine. What I'm saying is I don't see any statutory reason why that information could not have been shared with me. And indeed, given that you've chosen to raise this, I will raise the point that the leader did in fact share information that he knew with the other Crowborough councillors. You can shake your head if you like, Councillor Owen Williams, but it's a fact, right? Now, we didn't know when this was going to break from the Home Office. And given that we didn't know when it was going to break from the Home Office, there is no possible way that the leader would have known how long those Crowborough councillors, the other Crowborough councillors, I'm the only one who didn't know, right? There is no possible way that the leader would have known that. Now, I want to look forward, but quite frankly, some of the people around this table today, and I'm looking at you, Councillor Owen Williams, you've tried to disrupt this meeting, and I'm not very happy about it. And I've tried my best to chair fairly, but if you're going to make allegations, make them, and then I will deal with them.
Sorry, what allegation am I making?
I will write to you separately after this meeting, Councillor Owen. I will write to you separately after this meeting.
Thank you.
Okay? Right. With that, I have one other question from Councillor David White online, and then it is my intention to move forward and finish this item. Thank you. Councillor White, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
Sorry, I think I couldn't unmute. I beg your pardon. Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate your committee and you, Chairman, for, I think, an excellent scrutiny, because I've been on council for a considerable number of years, and that's the first time I've ever seen scrutiny effectively carried out. I think the grilling that you put the Home Office through, I think, is a commendable example of how scrutiny should take place. But I've got two questions to ask. The first one is, I wouldn't like to lose sight of the comments of Councillor Primmitt, which I think were endorsed by Councillor Cox, and that is the question of what is confidential information and what can be shared with all councillors, because all councillors are elected equally, and I think all councillors are therefore equally entitled to the information that is supplied to council. I think I even heard Mr. Larter say that when he had his in-confidence meeting, he did anticipate that the information would be shared with elected representatives. Not quite sure what he meant by elected representatives, but it's possible that Councillor, or rather Mr. Scott, has a more limited definition of what is elected representatives and whether it should really be shared with the leader. So that's my first question, and I think probably scrutiny should take forward this question of looking more carefully into what is confidential information and what should be shared with councillors generally. My second question is more curiosity, and that is, I think I heard Mr. Hardin say that he was fairly confident that the camp would only be used for a year for the asylum seekers because the MOD had other purposes in mind for the camp. I'd quite like to know what those other purposes were. Thank you very much.
Well, Councillor White, I suppose that camp forms part of the MOD's training estate, and I would assume that, the armed forces of this country have training needs, and therefore, we can't fill every single training establishment
Well,
with asylum seekers. I'm
But
assuming
is
that's
it
what
right
they
to-
mean.
Is it right? Is it right to make assumptions in relation to government? Because I don't think it is. I'd much rather have assurances rather than assumptions.
Likewise, I would too. Mr. Bending would like to come in here.
Yeah, so Councillor White, thank you for the question. And I suppose this is part of the problem that I'm now going to answer a question second-hand on behalf of the Home Office, which is what we've been trying to avoid. But for the avoidance of doubt, the Home Office have told us they want, the Ministry of Defence have told us that they want their site back for its current operational use, so for training, as a training base for the military and cadet forces. They see it as a central plank of the way they are operating this site with lots of other sites around the country as part of those training needs. And so whilst they're begrudgingly giving the site to the Home Office for 12 months, they do want their site back for its current use. That is what we have been told. But as I say, I'm now extending that second hand rather than you getting it directly from the Home Office as you could have had this morning.
Just before we wrap up on this, the last meeting that happened last week with all the local stakeholders, I'll come to you in a second, Councillor Primmett. The last meeting we had last week with all of the stakeholders, was there anything agreed with who should be the lead local stakeholder in this issue going forward? Was there any agreement reached in that meeting as to that? It doesn't necessarily have to be, the question's not necessarily directed to you, Councillor Partridge, it's directed to whoever was in the meeting last week, which I'm assuming would have been someone from Wealdon.
I was in the meeting. I think it's very clear that all the different agencies and authorities have a role to play in assessing the suitability of the site.
Was there a lead agency designated, as a communications hub?
No, that hasn't been formally agreed, no.
No. Was it informally agreed?
Absolutely not, no.
No, okay.
There's
all
a
right,
role for the
that's all I wanted to know. And then, Councillor Primmett, is this a short one? Because I'm sure
very short. Just going back to my previous comments about is this for 12 months? I think I understand the permitted development rights that the government can use lasts for 12 months. So presumably they say it will be for 12 months and then it will be extended.
My understanding is that if they choose to use Part 19 Class Q development, then that has a 12-month limit. That limit commences, or the commencement of that starts when they inform us that they are doing, they are undertaking permitted development. I don't know whether we've had that confirmation yet. I doubt it because of what they said earlier, but I think in the past, when these sites have been used, they've initially used them on that basis and then passed a statutory instrument or an SDO to continue the use beyond 12 months. And I can see Mr. Bending nodding. So I think, it's one of the questions we did ask them earlier, right? And this is the last question, Councillor Benton. I don't want any more.
It's not a question. It's a thank you to Councillor Primmett for saying basically what I was going to say, picking up on that 12-month window. My view would be that if the Home Office were to declare or even intimate that there was a use beyond a 12-month period, they could very easily prejudice their ongoing plans, which of course they haven't declared to us yet.
Yes, thank you. Right, and with that, can I say thank you to everyone who's answered the questions today. Thank you, Councillor Partridge. Thank you, Councillor Millwood. Thank you, Mr. Scott and Mr. Bending. And also thank you to all members of the committee for that. So we can move on to the next item on the committee agenda, which we should be able to get through pretty quickly. We've had to move this agenda around quite a bit. So on consultation with Mr. Bending, we've agreed to move the presentations into the next meeting. The budget working group has met several times now and continues to meet on a regular basis to discuss the ongoing budget. And we will update the committee in due course. Are there any forward plan items that people would like to raise at this time? No? Sorry?
Probably the Crowborough camp. We need to add that, don't we?
to the forward plan.
Yeah.
Well, the forward plan it's not part of our.
So the forward plans, the forward plan for decision making by this authority. So there isn't a decision for this authority to make around Crowborough Camp, so we don't need to add that to the forward plan. We could consider adding it to the work programme for this committee to return to the topic of the camp in the future. What I would suggest is, I think that's a good idea, but it would be difficult at this stage to pick a particular time frame for when we should do that. But we should keep it, as we have done today, keep an active watching brief on it. We can hold a session at relatively short notice. We heard today from the Home Office they don't know when they're going to start using the site, if they're going to start using the site. Once we know that, perhaps we programme 2 or 3 months after that to have a session to talk about how it's going, assuming, which all makes lots of big assumptions in the meantime, doesn't it? But yeah, let's keep a watching brief and come back to it. But absolutely noted, we should do that.
I would concur. I'd like that added to the work programme. I think it's very important that we do keep abreast of what's going on there, both for council's sake and also for the residents' sake.
Can we also invite the police in? Because I noted that they were watching today and they said that they weren't going to give any comments because they didn't have any briefings. But once they have their briefings, it might be quite helpful for us moving forwards. And I think that would be really good for this committee to hear from them as well. So I know your diary is getting busy, but can you make it a little bit busy, I think? Thank you.
I'd like to hear from them, certainly. What I would say, is that they did a fantastic job on Saturday in Crowborough. It was a very peaceful protest. There were no arrests. There was no violence. It was absolutely, as you'd expect, a peaceful protest in Crowborough to go. So, that's
Sorry, Councillor Cox. Just for the record, it wasn't a police officer on the screen today. It was Hannah Yalden from the Assistant Chief Fire Officer from the Fire Service who was watching. So the police were it's fine. The police were invited, but ultimately declined to attend at relatively short notice. So the police were not here today, but we could return to ask them questions. Likewise, we could ask the Fire Service questions. Hannah could stay for about 2 hours this morning and then had to drop off the call, as you probably noticed. So we didn't get an opportunity to ask her questions today on behalf of the Fire Service, but we can return. And likewise, we have not yet been able to seek agreement from either the County Council or the NHS to attend these sessions to be able to answer those authorities' questions. I think it's an ongoing conversation we can have.
Councillor Lunn had something.
Very quickly, I concur with you about the policing on Saturday. My understanding is that Surrey Police were brought in and drafted in to support Sussex Police. So I've got a question to Chris Bending as our officer and involved with these working groups. The cost of additional policing of this site, and I know there's questions around, the Home Office saying, right, we're going to provide some extra resources or money, but actually money's not going to get officers on the ground or, support. And if it's just like 2 officers and they're based in Lewes, that's not going to help the situation, especially when you're drafting in police from Surrey. So I think there's lots of questions around policing, and if those questions and discussions are happening in the working groups, particularly around costs and what the Home Office is doing and the number of officers, because if officers across Sussex Police are expected to be drafted in to support the Crowborough camp and then not covering our local communities, that's an issue and we need to be informed about it. So I'd like to leave that with Chris, if I may, to come back to us, because I think they're really important safety issues around policing and resourcing.
I think we all want to know what the resourcing plan is for Crowborough, and
yeah, so I can provide a bit of an update. So absolutely, as Councillor Lunn says, my understanding also is that there was resource lent, borrowed, mutual aid provision from Surrey Police over the weekend to support the protest on Saturday. I personally was working on Saturday and liaised with an officer who I understand works for Surrey Police ordinarily. The police have been relatively clear so far to date. They understandably can't just magic new police out of thin air. So whilst the Home Office have committed to providing additional funding, which is great, the chances are that is ultimately about providing additional overtime or additional mutual aid requests through from neighbouring forces as required to meet the need. In the short to medium term, the police don't have another answer to that. They have an operational pool of staff they will draw from. But the Home Office have confirmed that they will fund the impact of this to policing as they have to other public service agencies, as you'd absolutely expect them to.
Councillor Coleman.
Yeah, just really quickly, because we know it's attracted national interest in terms of far-right extremist groups, so intelligence as well on that, because it does pose quite a threat.
Sure. Yeah. For what it's worth, I didn't see any far-right extremists in Crowborough on Saturday.
But we know that they exist, and we do need to have the intelligence, because it can be a great threat.
I'm not suggesting that,
Yeah.
that it's not sensible to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Moving on. Item 11. I don't think there's any urgent business. The date of the next meeting is the 12th of January 2026 here in Hailsham. And with that, I'll declare this meeting.
We just need to be clear for the rest of the committee, Chair, that we had due to have item 13, which was Sussexfield Homes accounts, which is due to be held in exempt session. Members have seen that on the agenda. In discussion with the Chair, we've also agreed to defer that item to the next meeting, so you'll hear from that at the next meeting. It makes no difference to the outcome of that process. There's no prejudice to the process as part of that. So we'll present that to the next item, having been sitting for 4 hours. Again, relevant officers have had to go in lots of different directions, including myself.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Enjoy your lunches. Thank you. Bye.